Hello and welcome to ATARC's IT Modernization Virtual Summit. My name is Kirsten Patton and I'm the Working Group Program Manager here at ATARC. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and we are a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. We provide ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. I would like to thank our partners today over at Acquia, Armis, Atlassian, AvaPoint, Denodo, Dynatrace, ForcePoint, ForgeRock, Avanti, Nutanix, Pure Storage, Rubrik, REI Systems, Savant, Sonatype, Software AG Government Solutions, and Veeam Government Solutions. And additionally, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Please remember to place all of your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen during and throughout our panel discussion. And I would also like to remind you to please answer the CPE-based poll questions as they come up throughout today's sessions in order to receive your credits. So with that, I would like to introduce our visionary keynote. We're very excited to have her here today. She is the Executive Director within the Technology Modernization Fund at General Services Alliance Administration, Rayleen Young. Rayleen, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for the introduction, Kirsten, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of ATARC's Federal IT Modernization Summit. As Kirsten mentioned, I'm Rayleen Young, and I'm happy to be here at the General Services Administration as the new Executive Director of the Technology Modernization Fund Program Management Office. I'm also thrilled to be here today with our federal and industry partners to share a bit about GSA's vision for technology modernization and how TMF fits into that vision. I'd love to start by sharing some brief background about my journey into public service. I began my career in the tech industry, where I spent years developing large-scale software systems and products. From there, I moved into the nonprofit sector and saw firsthand how technology works, or sometimes fails, at the state and local government level. In fact, I first met GSA's administrator, Robin Carnahan, while working with hundreds of state and local government partners, where I learned from her unique ability to bridge between the worlds of government and technology. We share the view that what's so powerful about technology is its ability to change people's lives. So something we'd often ask ourselves was, how can we use technology to have the most positive impact on people's lives right now? That led us to GSA. A big part of GSA's mission is helping agencies improve the way they build, buy, and use technology. We help government leverage technology to remove barriers, reduce inequities, and design systems that work well for everyone. We believe that websites and other government tools and resources should be easy to use and accessible to all, and that government can be smarter about how it procures and uses technical tools and services. This ties directly into our three priorities. First, to change the buying process, recognizing that modern technology is built iteratively, not all at once, and requires ongoing incremental updates. Secondly, is to simplify experiences for people who use government services. And finally, we know that the greatest transformation we can have in many ways is improving the technical capacity of our workforce. So we're making it more appealing and easier for great tech talent to work in government. You can learn much more about our IT initiatives and priorities at gsa.gov/technology. Now I want to move on to the Technology Modernization Fund and how it aims to accelerate this mission of making technology work for the public better, faster, and cheaper. So first off, what is the Technology Modernization Fund, or TMF as we call it? The TMF is an innovative approach to investing in and really trying to get the most out of technology modernization projects taken on by the federal government. It combines a number of things that are quite unique to federal IT modernization projects. First, we take an incremental approach to funding, where investments are tied to the delivery of specific milestones instead of made all upfront and all at once. This enables teams to take a much more agile and iterative approach, enabling them to course correct or update their original assumptions or goals along the way. We can also be responsive to dynamic and critical funding needs and invest in projects that might not fall neatly within a traditional annual budget and appropriation cycle. We collaborate closely with multiple groups, including the TMF board, the Office of the Federal CIO and CISO, technical leadership from across agencies such as DHS, CISA, USDA, and the VA, just to name a few. And of course, we work very closely with the agencies and project teams that we invest in and who are taking on the hard work. We have a bird's eye view into what's happening across the federal enterprise. We see what agencies are hoping to modernize and how they're approaching it. This year alone, we've received over 100 proposals from over 30 federal agencies, which is an incredibly rich data set that shows you what agency priorities are and what they need. This means the TMF is incredibly well positioned to identify cross-cutting trends, to spot opportunities for leverage and scale, and to connect agencies with one another, often when they're facing the same challenges. And we know that by working together, they can benefit from each other's work. The TMF is relatively young, it's just a few years old, but I think it really represents a long-term investment in government's ability to develop technology that centers on user needs and works at the speed of need. It's more than just a source of funding. We believe it can be a catalyst for impact and set a new standard for what successful technology modernization at scale can really look like. So now you might be wondering, what exactly does the TMF invest in? Well, first of all, we do focus on key government-wide and administration priorities. This includes modernizing high-priority systems and high-value assets, advancing enterprise-wide cybersecurity maturity and capabilities, and of course, investing in public-facing digital services. We work to support the American Rescue Plan and the President's management agenda, and always keep in mind the ultimate goal of improving the public's overall customer experience with the government. But we also think about how we can build capabilities in areas of government, that the government may have struggled with in the past, but are still critical for the long-term health of our nation's technology infrastructure. These include being responsive to challenging program demands and user needs, enabling that cross-agency collaboration I mentioned earlier through technology, tools, and information, and of course, accelerating the development and adoption of critical shared services and infrastructure. To give you an example of the first, we give projects access to timely, accessible funding in the case of acute or emergent demands on programs and systems. Technology and mission needs can change incredibly rapidly, making it impossible for agencies to predict everything they will need in advance. In addition, meaningful modernization might also require a more spiky procurement cycle, where with larger lifts when transitioning or deprecating systems that then smooth out once programs are cut over and teams can rely on faster and cheaper modern systems. The TMF has the ability to support all of these cases. We can provide funds to agencies at the speed of their need, responding to the requirements of the moment while providing support, accountability, monitoring, and oversight all along the way. One example of a project like this is the Department of Homeland Security's Southwest Border Technology Integration Program. This aims to accelerate improvements to border processing speed and capacity. Second example or type of projects that we support are ones that span multiple agencies and technology stacks in the aim of providing a single unified service to the public. A great example of this is the Department of Labor's Visa Application Transformation Project, which eliminates the need to physically mail documents between multiple agencies, including the Department of Labor, US Citizenship and Immigration Services, and employers themselves. And you can imagine how much more effective and efficient the new process can be. The Department of Homeland Security's project I just mentioned is another great example of this, as it integrates with systems not only at the Departments of Justice, but also at Health and Human Services. Finally, coming back to the idea of shared services, the TMF is incredibly well positioned to not only surface critical needs that might be served by new shared services, but we can also accelerate the maturation and adoption of existing shared services and infrastructure. Our recent investment in Login.gov is an incredible example of this. Login.gov already enables over 30 million active users to access over 200 services that span 27 federal agencies. With its support of the TMF, they aim to expand to meet the needs of all federal agencies while providing more accessible and equitable identity verification, including in-person options for vulnerable populations. This will help expand access to digital services for millions of people who've traditionally been unable to do so, all while reducing fraud and government-wide costs at scale. If you ever want to learn more about our investments and approach, you can learn more at tmf.cio.gov. So now that I've shared a bit about GSA's vision for technology modernization and covered how the TMF fits into that vision, what it is, how it's positioned to be a catalyst for impact at scale, and I've also shared a few examples of investments that we've already made. But if I can leave you all with one takeaway today, it's this. I believe the tech industry has already invented all of the technology we need to solve the problems we all face in delivering services to the public. Today, we know who our users are. We know there are great tools out there already, and we deeply understand what the impact of delivering well and building services the right way can be. So now it's a matter of bringing all of it together and applying the right technology and the right tools in the right way. Technology gives us the ability to fundamentally change how public services are delivered. We can enhance capabilities, we can simplify services and make them easier to use, and in doing so, increase access, equity, and opportunity for everyone. And we can do it all from behind a keyboard, often virtually and incredibly quickly, all at scale. I'm grateful and lucky to be in a role in an organization whose mission is so focused on making technology work great for people. But I know there are so many opportunities to do the same in all sectors and at all levels of government. I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be in government and to be working on problems like these all across IT modernization. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can all accomplish together in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rayleen. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. Up next, we will be hearing from Darren Graham, the Solutions Architect at Software AG Government Solutions. Darren, the floor is all yours.
Good day, everyone. My name is Darren Graham, and I'm a Solution Architect at Software AG Government Solutions. I've been working on application modernization projects for about 2 decades. And my hope today is that over the next few minutes, I'll be able to convince you that organizations should stop funding traditional application modernization efforts. I believe that we need to change our optics and approach application modernization problems differently. Now, when I talk about application modernization strategies here, I'm talking about application replacement, the rip and replace approach that's commonly employed across the federal government. Take this analogy as an example. Let's say you wanted to completely modernize your kitchen. You'd probably replace your cabinets, the appliances, plumbing fixtures, furniture, lighting, maybe even flooring. You'd demolish all these components and you'd discard them all to make room for new ones. However, once your kitchen modernization project is complete, you'd still basically have the same functionality as you had before. For example, the refrigerator still keeps items cold, the sink still provides hot and cold water, the oven still cooks your food. But you may also realize some incremental benefits of modernization. For example, your smart refrigerator automates your grocery list. Your cookware is easier to clean. The knives are sharper, so you reduce your risk for injury. So in many ways, this kitchen example mirrors the same cost-benefit scenarios that we see commonly in IT application modernization projects. But if a large portion of the application functionality doesn't change, why modernize to begin with? Many argue that removing the technical debt of applications can take a large chunk out of the cost of existing applications. Supporting databases or other underlying software components may require expensive licensing. Processes can be streamlined because the new applications can automate repetitive tasks and eliminate manual work. For heavily regulated agencies like the IRS or FDA, new data tracking or reporting requirements might need to be satisfied. And in some agencies, the underlying hardware and operating systems themselves may no longer be supported. This introduces risks and costs there. Newer, more modern UI experiences can make jobs easier and help retain talent within the agency. Nobody likes to work on antiquated systems that handcuff you and create manual work. And finally, overall costs are reduced because resources within the required technical skill sets are a lot easier to find, and agencies can leverage the cost benefits of cloud adoption. But as is often the case with replacement strategies, these benefits are often overpromised and are significantly underachieved. This is because the very nature of how federal applications are designed compounds the risks when implementing changes, and this risk becomes exponentially proportionate to the size of the change and the strategic importance of the application. Federal government has been digitizing data systems of record for decades, one project at a time. And many different implementation teams over time have fielded varying supporting technologies. Now, the good news is the logic developed within these systems have been tested, stressed, improved, and curated over time. But these systems of records were never typically built with change in mind, so they're pretty brittle and fragile. Finally, these applications are large and complex and interconnected. Every ball that's being balanced here on this image is an entire ecosystem of code, data, personnel, and teams, and value. A change to any one of them can and often does affect them all. And of course, we need to account for the added complexity of creating new systems and moving existing systems to the cloud. These point-to-point and ETL-based interfaces add to the complexity, and it makes it harder and more expensive to maintain. Enterprise connectivity needs to be reimagined. Here's another way of looking at it, which might look more like a proper application architecture drawing. I often find something like this in my discussions with agencies. So in addition to the complexity within these interconnected applications, we have to consider security, performance, scalability, and adoption of standards. Agencies have to encompass all of this while incorporating new technologies, all while managing migrations of applications to the cloud. Oh, and by the way, plan and execute this on top of shifting and sometimes unknowable financial backdrop. There's an alternative approach that I've seen yield significant returns for agencies that have adopted it. This is to API enable existing enterprise applications using integration technology. Even if the logic and the data in the existing applications were not originally designed to be exposed as APIs, agencies can leverage pre-built integration adapters to tap into them. With this modern tooling, connections can be enabled very quickly and without requiring code changes in existing applications. To prove this point, I've seen customers take a 30-year-old application running on a mainframe and expose its data and logic in real time using a modern REST API in just a few clicks, all without a single line of code being added and without requiring a single configuration change to the application. Once created, these APIs become governed, reusable enterprise assets, complete with modernized security controls that support things like data redaction and zero trust architectures. This API layer provides an abstraction from existing and new enterprise applications, and it facilitates real-time on-demand access to data, which reduces the need for costly data replication via batch and ETL code. All of this together reduces interface development efforts, sustainment costs, and sometimes more importantly, complexity. So just a quick summary. We need to stop modernizing applications using large rip and replace strategies. There's just too much risk and not enough realization of the benefits. Agencies need to rethink how enterprise applications communicate. While point-to-point interfaces, data warehousing, and ETL batches may have provided really good short-term benefits, these will not scale as we need to allow applications to be modernized and move to the cloud. The key here is to adopt an API-led integration strategy to unlock logic and data in existing systems. This will provide the agility that the enterprise requires to be able to transform itself well into the future. Thanks for watching and listening to my talk today. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to hear about how we can stop modernizing IT the old way and embrace API-based integration technology to finally realize the benefits of enterprise agility. Have a great day.
Thank you, Darren. We appreciate you sharing that with us. Up next, we will be hearing from Kevin Cochran, the SVP for Product Marketing over at Acquia. Over to you, Kevin.
Great. Thank you so much. And very excited to hear the previous speakers. And I'd like to very much pick up on some of the conversations that they have started leading here today. What I'd like to talk about is an entirely different approach to thinking about how to drive digital transformation by taking a citizen-centric approach. And the approach here is really dispelling the prior mindset that we all bring to the table when we're thinking about investment in new disruptive technologies. We worry about legacy architectures, we worry about legacy systems, we worry about legacy processes. And at the end of the day, we need to stop and first think, what is it that our citizens are attempting to accomplish? Where are they today and where do they want to be? And we can use a simple example here of someone who may simply be thinking about how to best understand how to pay their taxes. And in order to take the citizen-centric approach, we need to first really visualize who our citizens are. What are they trying to accomplish in their daily life? And what are the complexities that they're managing in their daily life that they don't want to face when they're simply trying to access critical services from our government agencies? And we can take a little example and look at each individual customer journey and to try to start and understand the individual breakpoints that they have when they're trying to accomplish their personal goal. We've all seen that citizen expectations have changed during the time of the pandemic. Now, citizens being fully digital first and being entirely dependent upon government services in order to keep safe during the pandemic, citizens now have the same expectation of our agencies that they have of major consumer brands. And just like a consumer brand, we need to think through the end-to-end customer journey and how we can deliver it. And in so doing, best understand what technologies to invest in the cloud and how to wrap around legacy systems proper APIs so we can easily integrate legacy business logic in order to afford the citizen the services they demand. And looking at a simple journey that the customer may take as they're trying to fulfill a simple goal of understanding how to pay their taxes, we can see how they need to interact on the website, on a mobile phone, and we can understand how they need to maybe ask a question in an online forum, or maybe actually visit a local agent in order to ask a critical question that they may not be able to easily resolve online. And of course, filling out any sort of application and getting any sort of confirmation that they properly filled out, submitted their taxes, and filed their return. As we understand and look at each point in the journey, we can see all of the different points of friction where there may be missing content, there may be missing data, there may be missing services that is actually impeding the customer's progress. And in the case of the Riveras, they're an active couple on the go with 2 young children. What they really want to do on their daily life is take their kids to school, take them to soccer practice. Spending all day trying to navigate the complexities of a government agency is not simply what they're seeking to accomplish. And so our goal is to make certain that we can, again, take a fresh new approach. And that fresh new approach is about, again, putting the citizens first and understanding what is the platform layer that we need to put in place to connect content, to connect data, and to connect application services that can be easily accessed via modern APIs that are wrapping around legacy systems in order to provide a continuous streamlined journey for the customer, in this case, a citizen, to achieve their goal. And what we believe very firmly is that that takes a new mindset, that takes a new approach. And that means putting in an integration layer, not just for application services, but an integration layer to connect content, connect experiences, and connect data and apply machine learning so that we can continuously orchestrate and optimize that experience, all pursuant to helping the citizen achieve their goal. And the process here is very much as we just heard in the prior call. It's not just enough to connect content and data, but we need to be able to access legacy systems through modern APIs that we could easily put in place on top of those legacy systems so we can focus on net new innovation for the citizen while over time mitigating and migrating legacy tech. What's interesting about this approach, a microservices approach, taking a microservices, API, cloud-first, headless approach, what we can also then do is then we can actually pre-package entire citizen experiences as templates that can then be rolled out across different agencies, across different levels of government, so that every single municipality, every single county, every single state doesn't have to replicate and start from scratch, but entire pre-composed solutions can be easily orchestrated and easily shared in a safe and secure manner across government agencies. And what we believe with this approach is we not only get a more citizen-centric approach, but we also get better global security, global governance, and compliance, because solutions can be pre-built once to optimize a specific customer journey, and again, can be governed centrally in terms of security architecture, in terms of compliance, and then that can be afforded across every agency that might share that common code. And lastly, in order to accelerate the delivery of this, we believe taking furthermore a more modern approach to accelerating the delivery of digital products is necessary. And that means bringing together subject matter experts in the agency with their IT colleagues into fusion teams where we can orchestrate and optimize specific workflows to help accelerate the delivery of new digital experiences that connect content, data, and services at scale with security and governance to, again, deliver on that citizen-centric approach. So we're very excited to speak with you all about the topic today, excited to hear the previous speaker, and looking forward to assisting any of you in your IT modernization efforts. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Up next, we have our first panel of the day, moderated by the executive editor at Federal News Network, Jason Miller. Jason, over to you.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. It's always good to be here. Thank you to all my friends at ATARC, Kirsten, Alyssa Cole, of course, Tom Suter, and it's always great to be part of these events. I do always enjoy them. As you heard, I am Jason Miller, executive editor of Federal News Network. You can, of course, find us on 1500 AM on your AM dial if you're in the DC area, and if you are not in the DC area, federalnewsnetwork.com. Before I get started today with the panel, and I know it's a quick panel, so I'll be quick about this, but I'm going to give you little facts and figures, little numbers to get your brain thinking this morning, since we are talking about digital transformation. So put your thinking caps on. Here we go. First number I'm going to give you, 8.2 billion. Now that is the amount of money that Bloomberg government predicts agencies will spend on cloud computing in 2021. Obviously, the full numbers aren't quite in yet, but if that actually plays out, 8.2 billion would be a 20% increase over the 6.9 billion spent in 2020. Now, much of that growth, according to BGov, is in the area of software as a service. They said as of mid-August, again, as of numbers were available back in mid-August, the agencies already spent $1.5 billion on SaaS, which is what they spent all of fiscal 2020. And obviously, in mid-August, there's still a month and a half left of that fiscal year. All right, next number, 83. And that's an about 83. That's the total number of agencies and tribal governments that have fully transitioned to the Enterprise Infrastructure Solutions, or EIS, contract as of September 30th. Now, that's out of 222 total agencies and tribal governments participating in EIS. Of those 222, 148 are at least 50% done with their transition. That meaning 74 have a ton of work to do between now and March 31st, let alone September 30th, which is when the next two big deadlines are. Of course, some of the biggest drivers of digital transformation is EIS, because it's laying the network foundation with things like software-defined networks and Wi-Fi 6. All right, last number, 57. Now, that's the percentage of agency respondents to a survey from ATARC that say they're using software development methodologies that focuses on the end user or customer, that is iterative and ensures mission areas receive capabilities faster. ATARC found 24% of almost 300 respondents from 27 agencies say they're using DevOps or DevSecOps for software development, and another 33% say they're using Agile, Scrum, or Kanban methodology. So 57, 83, 8.2 billion, a couple numbers just to kind of get you going. For our panel today, this is what I've asked each of the panelists to do. Take about 2 to 4 minutes to tell you something you don't know about how their efforts are digitally transform. We don't do bios. If you don't know what Jamie Holcomb does at the Patent and Trademark Office, look him up. He's easily found. If you don't know what Nagesh does at the Bureau of Industry and Security, look him up. You can find him there. And then we will get to your questions. Please ask questions. Remember, that is my job to ask questions. I'd much rather hear from you. So with that being said, let's start at the beginning. Jamie, since I called you out, why don't you lead us off? Tell us something we don't know about how USPTO is digitally transforming.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jason. The main answer to your question is it's not just about the technology. You also have to transform your culture. So what the USPTO did was we moved from a project-oriented IT department into a product-oriented IT department. In other words, we mapped the 158 separate unique projects that had start and stops and fits and stops and all this chaos. And we created products where the product owners are actually from the business unit. So the whole culture is IT doesn't deliver unless it's a business value, a business solution, a business priority. And that is decided by the business unit owner, the product owner, who is met with a technical architect or a technical engineer, someone right alongside. But we mapped those 158 different projects to 30 products across 4 product lines. And in that way, we transform the culture and the way IT delivers. That's my answer.
All right, that's a good one. So here's my quick follow-up. We hear this all the time. Never the technology, it's always the culture. I think someone should have a sign or some sort of saying that we can capture it. Is this working? Do people, and of course you're going to tell me it is because you're not going to tell me, no, Jason, we failed. But how's it working? How do you know it's working? That's the better question.
No, I love that. We have failed, Jason. There's a lot of things we have failed, but you fail fast and you fail small, such that you succeed and then you scale only on your success. You have to do it in 30, 60, and 90-day increments, or else it just doesn't work. So if you don't show results in 90 days, then stop doing what you're doing. The government is terrible for what's called sunk cost. You have to understand, don't feed the beast. Don't keep investing. Don't throw good money after bad. Stop, adjust. That's the whole thing. I love the fact we got to get it out there. Government can fail. Just don't fail over and over and over again. That's my answer.
All right, that's a good one. I'm sure you'll get plenty of questions about the setup of the product owner. So we'll leave that open. Nagesh, you tell us something we don't know about the Bureau of Industry and Security.
Sure. And Jamie, thanks for starting off with the thunderous set of remarks. I concur with Jamie 100%. He and I are brethren as part of the Commerce Tribe for CIO. We're part of the Commerce CIO Council, as we're both bureaus and agencies within Commerce. And Jamie's been a fantastic partner and collaborator. He's helped me get through some sticky situations at BIS. Jamie's been just awesome asset and resource for us at Commerce. And I walked into a situation in June 2020 where our systems dated back to 2004, 2008 era of time, like Windows 7 devices, all that kind of stuff. And so within the last year and a half, we've transformed it all. We're now operating on current tech standards, 2021 present kind of efforts. And for me, I think a couple of the big things we're doing right off the bat is embracing more, not only what Jamie talked about, products ownership. 100% we're doing the same exact model as Jamie's done. We're mapping out the business line requirements, ensuring the customers within BIS, both internal and external stakeholders, are plugging in and being part of that 360 perspective that I've advocated for in the past. The customer is a myriad when it comes to the federal products and offerings, right? You've got your government folks, you've got your non-government folks, you've got your private citizens, you've got the indirect and direct plays. And by playing that CX360, couple of big things I've done. I've poached someone from the USDS DHS team. So Mike Palmer's my associate CIO and chief experience officer. He's on week 6 on the job, but he's going to be pushing hard on the CX play of how we make sure the voice of the customer is heard when we do our digital product offerings. The other big piece I've been doing now that we've gotten a stronger hardware stance that's more up to date with current industry trends, data, and not only just data, but being smart about the data and the use of data in conjunction with the cloud. The pandemic, if there's anything I can say that's been a silver lining from this pandemic is the fact that you saw this burst of energy in IT maturity across the globe. 10 years of IT advances happened in a year and a half. That if you look at the New York Times and Economist, there have been some initial preliminary studies on this. They've seen massive advances, and it's because you've now got a larger customer base that has all of a sudden had to switch into how to engage in a hybrid and a virtual environment. And so BIS is one of those agencies that had to learn how to adapt quickly because we were a bureau that did not historically allow telework. And because of the remote maximized telework situation, we've now adopted and adapted into a posture where we can now do that while maintaining our core services offerings. Because for our bureau, because it's a national security bureau, we need people in the building, but we've created a flexibility so that they come in the building when they need to and then work from home when they can. And I'll pause there.
All right, very good. The one quick follow-up I'll ask of you is, so Mike is an associate CIO, chief experience officer, kind of an interesting combination. Is that something that you saw a need for and said, okay,
yeah,
we need somebody to do this type? And what does that really mean to be chief experience officer?
Yeah, no, great follow-up. So from the time I served with Maria at SBA before she and I departed within weeks of each other to our new purchase last summer, that was something I had been watching over the horizon over the last, few years of my public sector tenure, was this need of the customer, right? And I've seen it talked about. There's a lot of people talk about it, but I'm still looking for folks who will actually act on it. And I wanted to act on it because I wanted to take the technology and the tools and say, hey, a tool is a toolkit. These digital technologies, they're tools in the toolkit. How does this help augment? How does this help effect a better product offering or better service offering from the federal government? A good example of this is AI. Everyone talks about AI, and it's nauseating sometimes when I hear about artificial intelligence because I'm kind of going, do you actually know what you're talking about when you talk about that stuff? As a materials engineer, as someone who's worked on semiconductor manufacturing, I actually know a little bit because I studied under some serious folks who worked in AI. I'm no expert. So when I hear other people talk about it, I'm going, I know experts. Are you sure you know what you're talking about? But one thing I did hear one time that caught my attention that I thought was good was augmented intelligence. Look at AI as augmenting the way you do work, right? Because I think there's this fear factor when you hear something like AI that, the robots are gonna come replace my job. You're pushing me out of work. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is putting a tool set you can be more impactful, more effective, and more support service oriented. Remember, 360 was 600. The population in the United States is around 360 million, if I recall. It's in the 300 million plus. All right, we need to touch the citizens of the U.S. and it's a massive country, and our federal workforce is like a mill, right? So we're a fraction of our population. We need to service our population. So let's be effective. If we can do more, let's try to do more and be smart with how we do more with the resources we have.
All right. It's always difficult when for government agencies because everyone is their customer and everyone is their customer. So we're going to take a half a second here. And Tom, I'm coming to you next to start thinking about it. But the folks at ATARC is going to put up a poll for everyone to answer. So here's our first poll. In your opinion, how important are emerging technologies to further an agency's digital modernization journey? All right. Well, folks, figure that out. Let me ask Tom to jump in here. Perfect timing, Tom, for that question, because what you do is really emerging technology. You have IPv6 under your portfolio. You have something called data center optimization. I don't think we've heard of that one before. It's a new one, I think. But Tom, tell us something we don't know about some of the work you're doing within GSA.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned DCOI because, what people miss out of the DCOI policy is not just closures. It's really looking at application rationalization. That was something introduced in M1919. And I think a lot of agencies are doing it, but they're not going to the extent that they're giving the correct data to the CIOs to make strategic decisions in time to make changes in their portfolio. I think the APRAT process, the playbook that we put together, if agencies are following it, we've seen great benefits in this. We've highlighted some of those at the community of practice that I run. that's doing some fantastic work. They've got a complete inventory of all their legacy software and can quantify how much they have in the inventory, whether it's an application or a subcomponent of that application. And they have it in one view for the CIO to look at, to prioritize.
All right. I wasn't sure if you were done. I thought you were taking a breath there, Tom, for a second. So I will throw a quick follow-up. So the application rationalization piece is interesting because every CIO does talk about it. From your experience, is the disconnect happening with the inventory side, with the product side, as Jamie and Nagesh talked about, they create that product ownership? Where's the disconnect happening?
I think the problem may be with finding the true total cost of ownership. If they're running their own data center, it's generally in a hybrid environment where it's half IT and half facilities, and that facilities cost is hidden from the IT. And that's not getting flushed out properly. Plus, Steve Nauman, who likes to talk about shop fees, there's a lot of shop fees that go into an application that don't get flushed out as well. There's a lot of FISMA requirements, security requirements, and just if you're developing a function within the agency, you should be monitoring it and measuring that to see if it's effective and it's doing what it says it does. Check for availability. These are the same monitoring tools security should be using, but oftentimes we find the application owners are doing their own thing and duplicating costs. So that in itself could reduce the redundancy of applications within the portfolio.
I imagine that number that I gave earlier about spending on software as a service is a little bit of a silver lining for you. It means agencies are seeing that they have to push it out of their data centers and put it in someone else's data center, but understand the cost more. So hopefully that's a good sign.
We have a little twist on that. We are paying heavy attention to sustainability and resiliency for data centers, clouds, and software as a service. We are a proponent of shared services, whether it be at the agency level or department level. But we'd like to see agencies. We're gonna see what we can do about quantifying reducing greenhouse gases by moving to either a commercial data center, a cloud, or software as a service. Less equipment running, the better we are and the more optimized we are as a federal government.
All right, Tom just gave you guys a little audience out there, a little teaser to ask more questions on. Finally, Andrew, now it's up. Our poll answers are up. Hey, look at that. No surprise here. Very important that the emerging technologies are important. So there you go. No surprises. All right. Andrew, your last but not least, jump in and tell us what you're seeing from your customers as part of that REI Systems works with.
Sure, thanks, Jason. Yeah, we're so being the industry representative on the panel today. Our customers are predominantly federal clients, right? And so what we see the need for is the drive for innovation coming from industry keeping their ear to the ground and understanding what's going on in commercial practice and being able to kind of filter that and bring that to some of our customers. But also, bringing a capable and trained workforce into our customer engagements. Many of the messages that we've heard over the last few minutes are things that we hear repeatedly, right? So the need for customer experience, the need for defining those metrics, the need for being able to quantitatively create a hypothesis of how something is going to make a change, make an impact, and then measure, positive or negative, whether that change is actually occurring. So at REI Systems, we continuously upskill our people, but we also integrate that with REI Labs and being able to kind of play and prototype some of these capabilities so that we can bring them to our customers and share them. whether it's for example, creating a cloud agnostic, a cloud native delivery framework that can kind of build componentized machine learning operations or ML ops as a capability, and being able to deploy both platform services as well as infrastructure services dynamically to support that API driven economy that that was being referenced in an earlier conversation. To investing in the industry and being able to build out that next capability as a service. REI Systems has a deep root in grants management. And so as part of that, we've taken our experience and developed some, I won't say, fully shrink wrap products, but rather capability as a service that we can bring to our customers and be able to help them launch their missions where it makes sense, right sizing, where custom software is applicable versus where more of a repeatable solution might be brought to bear. But again, investing in those innovations, investing in our people to be able to augment those. The last one that I mentioned was just be, a true multi-cloud, fully redundant data analytics process. So it's something that we hear about in industry today. The use of multi-cloud can be expensive, but being able to demonstrate that capability so that should an actual disaster occur and one cloud provider is actually taken off the table, being able to have those services be fully redundant within another provider. So that's my answer, and back to you.
All right. I'm going to ask one quick follow-up, then we'll do another poll, and then we will go ahead and start getting to audience questions. So please go ahead and submit your questions. We got one so far I saw. I want to go back to something you said about the need for customer experience, defining metrics. Are you finding that agencies are struggling, or that's the hardest thing, is what is a metric, or what is a good metric, I should say? We often say metrics, web hits, right? Those used to be a big metric in the journalism field. We've all said web hits are really meaningless if you know who's behind those web hits. I imagine for government employees and government websites, it's similar. Is that been the biggest challenge you're seeing?
I would say it's one of the challenges. Another of the challenges is there's this concept of front-loading user experience or customer experience, and then creating a delivery timeline just to execute on that, rather continuously experimenting and looking at the data, the logs, to actually answer those questions. So clickstream may be one metric, but the what is of value to the user? What is of value? And it's not, when I say a user, yes, it's the citizens, but it's also the government employees who are actually interacting with these systems, making their jobs more effective, more streamlined, easier. So it's that kind of holistic view.
All right. Well, I've got a follow up for everyone on that one, but let's go ahead and ATARC folks put up that second poll. There it is. Within your agency, how far along are you with digital modernization journey? All right. So let's do a quick follow up on that from what Andrew was saying, whether Jamie or Nagash or Tom, you want to weigh in on this? That metrics question, how are you measuring impact? How are you measuring success? And how do you define what those metrics are? Because again, same problem. Everyone's your customer, and really everyone's your customer. Jamie.
So we got product owners who have to describe KPIs, or your key performance indicators. It's not all the metrics, it's your key ones, and it has to be business oriented. So the big deal is to make sure you can measure it, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I mean, it's really simple as far as that goes. What are the biggest ones? Better, cheaper, and faster. Of course, come on, right? Better, everybody's always going after better, and they keep forgetting cheaper and faster. What? Well, the whole thing is, I've already told you, if it's not done in 90 days, I don't want to hear about it, because that's just pie in the sky stuff. Don't talk. Of course, you have to have a plan for 1 year. Yeah. But if you don't get traction in those 90 days, shut up, adapt, do the right thing. All right. That's the time period, right? The faster. The cheaper part, for God's sake, do not consider just that you have contractors and labor. What about your federal workforce? Oh, well, that's, I can't do anything about that. No, there is. Make sure you show them how expensive federal workers truly are. Put that loaded benefits on top of it. Make sure you understand it's 33 to 38%. Every federal worker gets great benefits. If you're not adding that on top of your cost, you're not showing those true costs. Facilities was mentioned, I think, by Thomas. So the fact of the matter is you have to include everything. Now, you might not have a chargeback program. That's okay. But make sure people understand what it actually costs. Because if they think they can get it for free from IT, they will. One of the things I say about Measure, if you can get it better from a cloud provider, go. I'm trying to create a microcosm of supply and demand within the USPTO between the product owners and my IT staff. Remember, I said there's 4 product lines: patents, trademarks, back office business, and IT infrastructure. The back office business and the IT infrastructure need to create those shared services, because if you can get them better elsewhere in the commercial world, go. Bring it. Don't be relying upon me. I want better, cheaper, and faster. That's my answer.
All right, I got a couple questions coming in, but quickly, Nagesh or Tom, you want to weigh in on that, or Andrew?
I echo everything Jamie just said. I think the caveat that I would add also is there's the direct and the indirect costs, right? And IT is pervasive all across the line from start to finish. And you're seeing that more and more, especially with mobile device use, right? Because with mobile device use, you're seeing an awful lot of the federal employees, when they have a mobile phone, they're doing a lot more with that mobile phone than they used to, especially with the capabilities with data, cloud, and whatnot. I've been going through this with the BIS workforce, where they're getting used to the use of OneDrive and being able to actually edit a document on their phone on the go. And so with international travel devices, I'm looking at them going, okay, what do you actually need when you go abroad? Do you need a laptop? Do you need an iPad with a keyboard case, or do you actually need just an iPhone? Because you can do an awful lot of work. I have done work on my iPhone in the past. That capability is capable, because when I was on intermittent paternity leave earlier this year, Jason, as you know, I had my little baby boy, right? And so, but yes, and so I was right, and thank you, and so I still wanted to keep plugged in at work. Couldn't turn on my laptop every day because I'm helping my wife out with, in the early days of the baby, but I had my iPhone on me. I was able to be productive and check emails, sign off on documents, stuff like that. So I think that's an interesting thing, is understanding the nuances of where IT is pervasive, because I think a lot of time people don't realize IT is more pervasive than you realize, direct and indirect.
All right. So let me jump to an audience question, because I want to be aware of the time. Tom, I think this one's kind of for you, but we'll start with you and then see if it opens up to everyone else. Tim writes, what challenges are the communities of practice supporting these efforts facing? What else do they need? What resources do they need? So I think that's the partly comes to you.
Yeah.
Tom.
Let me just finish up on what Jamie was saying. I mean, who wouldn't want to work for this guy? I mean, this is public service at its best. In working for agencies, you get, and if the closer you are to the mission, the more impactful you can be and more rewarding it can be. My time at FDA was second to none. Community of practices is really great. Mine's a cloud and infrastructure community practice. We have 3,600 members. We started a training program this year. We've trained over 1,700 feds, which I'm really proud of. I need more trainers. I need more budget. I need, I'm just like everybody else. I need more. But I also need, the community of, the Centers of Excellence and 18F are doing really good jobs at big projects at big agencies. We've got nobody for the small agencies. So I really need some help there in having some incidental support. I can train them to learn how to use the cloud, but if they're not comfortable, if they run into a jam, they need a 800 number to call to get them out. And I'd like to provide that for them first and foremost. And I think that's, we're doing great in that regard, and the people are eager to learn and transition to other services. We did CISSP training a year and a half ago. I had 400 people at 2 sessions, and some of them were retaking their CISSP just to get a refresher. But there's an eagerness to get in that field.
All right. Jamie or Nagesh, you want to weigh in on communities of practice? I'm not sure how much you touch them from your day to day.
We use it. I leverage it all the time. In fact, I have my 3 division chiefs, my chief enterprise architect, my CXO, and my chief information security network officer. I plugged them into the federal communities of practice and have really made sure we're leveraging it, because I really want them to understand that the spectrum across. BIS is a tiny agency. We're small. We're small but mighty. And because of that, like Tom said, it's important for us to be able to leverage those communities of practice, because some of the bigger agencies, like my brethren Jamie over at PTO, they have, larger scales of economy to work with. And so if we can partner with them in any way or shape or form, it helps create a better effect for all of us. So
I can't improve on that other than to verify and validate, because Nagesh has reached out to me. I've reached out to Maria Roth. There's a lot of things that are going on. Census, I've reached out there too, right? So communities of practice doesn't necessarily depend upon the CIOs reaching out. It's the line level reaching out. And that's even better, because when you have that inherent interest at the line, when you're tactical, when you're doing those things, it's more real. It's visceral. It makes things happen. I love communities of practice.
yeah. In fact, I'll just say, I put it into performance plans of my staff. They are required to be part of a community of practice. They are required to upskill. I actually forced them to do that kind of stuff. I said, it's in your plan. So they can't argue with me and say, oh, I don't know if I have time. I was like, no, it's in your plan. It's a deliverable. You must do this, because it is for your benefit and for the agency's benefit, that you're constantly learning, you're constantly upskilling, you're constantly exposing yourself to new ideas, because that's how we can get better.
All right, let me jump in. Got 2 more questions. One just came in, but Natalie wrote earlier about how is the government marketing themselves to the brightest young minds across the country. I feel as though the high performing students often don't look to public service as a way to begin their careers in digital transformation. Interesting perception. I think there's a lot going on with this administration around kind of reinvigorating the internship programs. But I'll just throw it out to anyone to talk about getting kind of the brightest young minds into public service. And Andrew, I think it applies to you as well.
Well, I mean, there's that U.S. Digital Core program that they've now recently launched that's designed to help with the initial pipeline of talent from the tech, for folks who've just gotten their BCom or whatnot, BS, or just early in their early stage careers, that GS 9 to 11 route of tech service. So you've got that, you've got 18F, you've got the PIFs, you've got PMF. I think there's opportunities out there. I think it's being coordinated as best as possible. I mean, again, the needs of the government vary. There's definitely the pipeline we want to develop and we want to cultivate it, but there's also the need for the folks who have some experience, who can actually take the experience from their other, private sector or not-for-profit sector realms and apply it to help us do better as a government.
Yeah, and Jason, from our perspective, from an industry, we're constantly trying to attract that talent, and part of it is explaining that government, we're not writing COBOL, right? We're not actually working on mainframes. We're doing some real software delivery, cutting edge stuff, or at least leading edge in most cases, cutting edge in some cases, right? Let's not get too far, but the other thing that I find is connecting with people when we have the opportunity to talk about the missions that we support. Our counterparts here are focused. They've had great careers, focused on multiple missions, but predominantly focused across it at an agency perspective. We are supporting nearly 20 federal agencies and supporting some of the most important programs to our nation. And being able to appeal to those that want to make a difference is something that really helps us attract talent and really kind of energizing that workforce to help to deliver.
All right, we got about 2 minutes left, and we've got a new question. So let me get through that, because I know as Tom said, why wouldn't you want to work for Jamie? So there's no other thing you can answer except for why wouldn't you want to work for him? So Anna writes, and maybe we'll go kind of backwards on this one. Top challenges to modernization. Everyone, give me 30 seconds or less. Andrew, I think you went last time, so you go first this time, and then we'll go back in order. So Andrew, top challenges you're seeing when you work with agencies on modernization.
Sure. Top challenges, getting some traction, I would say, is probably one of the biggest challenges. There's momentum, It's trying to get in and break that momentum and being able to escalate those ideas so that they demonstrate the value. It has to connect with mission, has to connect with value, but making sure that we can get to the right people to have those conversations, I would say, is one of the biggest challenges.
All right, Tom, biggest challenges you're seeing around modernization, whether for you or for the people you work with?
I'll defer to Jamie because he's really hit the mark. Is agile, is making sure you're doing it in small increments that you could see failure really quick.
All right, Nagesh?
I would say it's definitely culture change and around risk. I think there's a lot of fear around risk and risk taking. And I agree with some of the earlier sentiments from Jamie about risk. If you fail quick, fail fast, and pick up. And here's the big thing: own it. Like, I've had successes and failures at projects I've worked on. I own the successes. I also own the failures. I don't try to hide it. I don't try to pin it on someone else. I go, nope, I messed up. This is where I messed up. I think there's, the time wasn't right for it, but it's not a bad idea. It just wasn't ready at the time. It needed to be cooked a little bit more and flushed out. So that's what I would say.
And before Jamie goes, I think that's one of the most important pieces. You own it. You, as the CIO, it's on me. Because I think too often in government that you get that risk aversion because there's someone not going, oh, they're kind of doing one of those things pointing in each direction. So I think you saying I own it is
I
actually,
own it. Yeah. When I mess up, you'll hear me say, "Yep, I own it."
And
I will not lie about that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Just want to, I got to be clear on that. There's nothing wrong with owning it. I learned that many times in my life.
It says on my challenge coin, and I hope to see you all one day. Fortune favors the bold.
All right, we're a little late. So Jamie, 30 seconds or less, you get the last word.
Thank you. I love the fact that Andy, Tom, and Nagesh, we all agree. It's all about culture. It's all about people, because that's what business we're in. We're in the people business, not the tech business. Saying that, I need to reach across the aisle because the biggest impediment to fast is procurement. The federal acquisition regulations give you the flexibility to operate within certain bounds. Read the damn FAR. Procurement officers are too risk averse. They do not use the tools that are given to them by the FAR. For God's sake, get stuff done in 90 days and don't tell me it can't be done.
So I'll just, I love that, but you've got to be the one who's pushing and taking and doing the Nagesh, put that hand up saying, if it fails, they can come to me. All right. I think there's much more we could talk about, but we got the next person coming up. So Kirsten, I throw it back to you, and let's give Andy and Jamie and Nagesh and Tom a good round of applause. Thank you so much for your time today. I pass it back to Kirsten.
Thank you, Jason and panelists. Up next, we will be hearing from another emerging technology talk. This time, Matt Sherman, the senior solutions engineer at Savient.
Thank you, Kirsten. Hello, thank you everyone for joining me today. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, so everybody seeing that?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So in this presentation, I'll be discussing how Savient's identity governance and administration solution utilizes analytics and machine learning to improve the security posture of enterprise identity infrastructure. So with applications and services moving to the cloud and a workforce that is increasingly mobile, identity really has become the new security perimeter. Savient's Enterprise Identity Cloud Platform is a cloud-based service that provides identity governance and administration services, often referred to as IGA. IGA provides tools and services to ensure principles of least privilege, also known as zero trust. At a very high level, we're allowing you to identify who has access to what does that access secure, and is it being used appropriately? A centralized repository for all your identity-related information is a necessity to truly govern your IT landscape. Agencies typically have some authoritative source or multiple authoritative sources that account for the identities of their employees, partners, and contractors. Depending on the size of the agency, this can be quite large. Savient has customers with hundreds of thousands of identities. Then you have your enterprise applications. Large organizations can have hundreds of applications. Each of these applications have accounts with various entitlements assigned to the individual users. Managing access to each application individually is very difficult, but most importantly, it's impossible to ensure appropriate security oversight. Savient has built-in and configurable connectors that use REST API and SOAP protocols to integrate with these various platforms. And through these connectors, we're able to ingest the end user identities and accounts from the various platforms. Savient's reconciliation rules then will combine those accounts and identities and match them up so that in the end you have a centralized repository of all the identity related information that we call an identity warehouse, where you can quickly see all the access entitlements granted at the user level. So how does this relate to machine learning? To start, Savient uses machine learning to identify groupings of users with similar attributes and align them to roles. This is what's known as attribute-based access control, which is the successor to role-based access control, which really lacked the ability to identify nuances in roles. A developer, for instance, could reside within different regions and might be responsible for either back-end, front-end, or full-stack development. Each of these attributes can align to different access requirements. Once these attribute-based roles are established, Savient uses machine learning to do complex risk management and compliance analysis. So one of these being peer group analysis, which compares access to others within the same attribute-based roles to identify any outlier access that's been granted to individuals that doesn't align to the access granted to others within that same grouping. That ties back to that least privilege, zero trust principle, ensuring users don't have entitlements that they don't need and that thereby can give them the ability to perform malicious behavior either directly or if their accounts have been compromised. So combining machine learning with automation allows us to reanalyze granted access as change notifications are received from authoritative sources. An employee location change, for instance, can realign that employee to a different attribute-based role. Savient will identify any access violations that have been created with that role change. And then automated business rules can also do things like disable access or launch a certification campaign to verify that user's access is still appropriate. We also integrate with other security platforms, giving us added insight into what the users are doing. We can see when users are logging into different platforms and use machine learning to establish baselines of normal activity and then identify suspect activity. For example, a user typically logs into a system Monday through Friday, 8 to 7. Connections outside that time frame will be logged as possibly malicious. Conversely, we can also then identify access that's not being used and should likely be disabled to decrease the attack surface of your critical assets. We can then incorporate third-party risk information with our own perform automated actions such as disabling access or launching access certifications. Savient uses machine learning to identify a host of security vulnerabilities tied to identity. We can identify when users are issued accounts directly to an application outside of the approval workflow, or orphaned accounts, which are active accounts not tied to any identity. So a user leaves an agency, but that access hasn't been disabled, still available even for that user that's left, or anybody else that might get a hold of those accounts. Savient sends alerts in these instances and also displays them in a drill down form within our security control center. So where are we headed to today with machine learning? Savient is focusing a lot of attention on machine learning to optimize administrative tasks. By observing repetitive administrative events like data entry for creating new users and accounts, Savient aims to streamline these tasks through automation, allowing the completion of the task with little to no input from the end users. So again, I want to thank you for joining me today. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or would like additional information, you can reach out to us at usfederal@savient.com. And I will also be participating in a panel tomorrow discussing automation within the federal government. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Matt. And up next, we'll be hearing from Ravi Shankar, the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Denodo. Ravi, over to you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Are you able to enable my video? It says the host basically stopped.
Hopefully Alyssa can help.
Thank you.
There we go.
Awesome. Let me... Sorry, this was not showing up correct. Okay. All right, let me share my screen and slides. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Ravi Shankar. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Denodo. Today, I'll be talking about how to future-proof the IT modernization within federal agencies with this concept called logical data platform and also a logical data fabric. So I will be interested in hearing at the end if any of you have actually heard about this particular term called data fabric. But let me actually go through my presentation itself. So we know the COVID situation has forced like two norms for us starting from last year. One is the reduced budget as a result of the COVID situation, and also reduced staff. With the current employment conditions in the United States, it has been a challenge with some of the staff turnovers and as such. So as CIOs are kind of grappling with how to basically make do with the amount of money that has been available, one, you need to keep the lights on, but how do you basically do the innovation with the rest of the money and with the staff that you have? So we are seeing a particular norm, and this is actually a Gartner that is talking about. They presented at their conference this year that many of the companies are migrating to the cloud. There's a huge momentum of people migrating to the cloud, and that is also common within the federal agency. So many of you are transitioning to the cloud. And over a period of time, as you can see here in this chart, right now, the current data and analytics workloads in the cloud is a very minimal amount, the 90 to 100%, that basically flips in a couple of years. And that's where we all will be in terms of running our workloads in the cloud. Now, getting to the cloud is not an easy challenge because many of our infrastructure basically looks like this. It is very disparate. It is loosely connected using multiple different systems. A lot of it have duplications in terms of whether it is data lakes or data warehouses and operational data stores and so on. And it is a challenge to migrate these to the cloud as you're trying to modernize with new applications. Either you're rebuilding or you're procuring a SaaS application. It is not an easy task to do that. So that's where Gartner is actually talking about this concept called the data fabric. And you can see like the three pillars here. So the accelerating change and so on. And the data fabric comes about accelerating the change aspect. And this was just this year. So the data fabric, in fact, last year was number 6 position. Today it's a number 3. And for the next year, for 2022, they have elevated as the number 1 trend that is going to provide the acceleration of the technologies and the modernization of the technologies. So let's take a look at what this data fabric is. So Gartner defines it as just like the fabric that we wear. It's a set of technologies that come together to stitch all the disparate data and systems and applications across the different locations, whether they are in the cloud, on premises, whether whatever format, structured or unstructured, and in whatever latency, whether they can be in rest or or in motion. So it actually brings all the data together cohesively and then provides unified view of that information to the consumer. So it could be citizens, agencies, departments, and so on, and all interrelated information. And Gartner is not the only analyst company that is talking about it. Forrester is also talking about it with a slightly different one called the Enterprise Data Fabric. And you can see the vendors on the chart, and Denoda is one among them. And they define data fabric as this middle tier. You can think of this as a 3-tier. You have the data sources at the bottom, you have the data fabric in the middle, and the data consumers at the top. And the data fabric consists of the data catalog, the knowledge graph, the metadata, the insights, the data integration or orchestration, so on. So that's how Gartner defines what is in a data fabric architecture. And Forrester also has a definition. So they have about 5 different layers here, all the way from data ingestion to data processing, data orchestration, discovery, and global data access. Nevertheless, all of them kind of converge on these 4 principles. 1, the data fabric integrates the data from disparate sources. 2, it delivers this integrated data as a cohesive view. Number 3, it provides it for operational as well as analytics. And number 4 is where it automates using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, there is a slight twist to it called the logical data fabric, which is what I'm here to talk about, which is you take the data fabric architecture, but you get rid of the persistence aspect of it, whether you're trying to put that into a huge monolithic data lake or any other repository. Then you get to the concept of this logical access, which means you leave the data where it is, but then you connect to it wherever the data is and bring together a unified view without having to physically move the data. And that's one of the key components within that is data virtualization. Again, I'd be interested in if people have heard about this one. It is a logical abstraction layer between the consumers of the data at the top and the systems at the bottom. So as you're managing the systems at the bottom and the consumers, and in this transition, a lot of changes happen and there are disruption to the consumers of the data, but the data virtualization layer provides that intermediate layer that allows you to actually make the changes without having to worry about the business disruption. So it has this data abstraction principle. It does that data integration without the replication aspect. It is all in real time because it's a pass-through system. You consume the data directly from the sources. It has a data catalog for your data governance aspects. It has a very rich centralized security and governance and delivers the data in whatever format that you need. So it's a very powerful concept. By this, you can actually make the changes underneath without the business being disrupted. And you can see here the data fabric is at the peak of hype cycle, but the data virtualization is a very stable technology that has been around for very many years. And it is at the peak of productivity at this particular point. And here is another chart from Forrester that actually pays of all the data management technologies people are considering. Data virtualization is one of the top ones that they are considering. So this is my last slide to kind of say that the data virtualization has many technical components to it. At the end of it, it is a core component of the logical data fabric. You see it on the right side over here, where it can connect to any kind of data that is out there, any location, and interactively brings that together. It has the data abstraction and also the artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to automate. And then you can use it for your analytics, operational data science, or any such use cases. And especially when you're trying to migrate to the cloud and modernize, this is a very good layer to have in your enterprise architecture to foolproof your modernization efforts. So let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Ravi. We really appreciate that. And we are just about out of time and we're ready to start our next panel discussion. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. If our panelists could please come on camera and unmute yourselves, we're going to do some quick introductions real quick. All right, I see Willie and Eric just came off mute. If you could put your Camera on. And there's Omar. Excellent. All right, I'm going to have you each introduce yourselves real quick, who you are, what agency you're with, what it is that you do at in your role. Let's start with Omar, please.
Omar Bouaishi. I work for HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. My program office is called Ginny May, and I am Director of Emerging Technology and Innovation. And I have for responsibility the introduction of new technology, the assessment, conducting the POC's evaluation, and assessing all the new trends that are coming up are on the horizon. So thank you very much for the invite. I'm privileged to be here and privileged to be a civil servant. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. It's nice to meet you. And over to Willie.
All right, good morning, everyone. So my name is Willie Hicks. I'm public sector CTO at Dynatrace, and I want to apologize now for the lighting. I'm actually in a hotel room out in Phoenix. We're out here at the DODIS Summit. That's the DoD Intelligence Information System Summit. And out here reaching out to our agency partners to understand their unique needs, their mission requirements, and to educate them around accelerating their time to mission, and specifically around IT modernization. So I'm glad that we're having this topic today. That's really my job. I'm all about outreach and working with agency and agency partners. So glad to be here.
Wow, that sounds like a fun time. And over to Eric.
Hi, everyone. Eric Ewing from the General Services Administration. I'm the Managing Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Data Analytics Center of Excellence. I also lead the Artificial Intelligence Community of Practice that's government-wide.
Thank you guys so much. So the topic that we'll be discussing today is using emerging technology to enable IT modernization. I'm going to turn it over to Omar first. Omar, could you just please take a few minutes and talk to our audience about where do you see the role of technology in the future of work going, just at a high level? What can folks expect?
Well, we have seen quite a few introduction in the cloud, and we have seen technology that are fast, that doesn't require a lot of memory, that are significant in terms of promoting agile development, low code, no code, that's one of them. Also, machine learning and AI are very important to the government and the use of robotics. So we have all this technology to contend with, plus we have our current stack of technology we use. The government will use technology currently to run our operation. But some of these technologies are old, and some will not be feasible to introduce these new things to it. So we need to do an assessment and making sure that we don't impact our operation, but at the same time, we don't miss the opportunity to introduce this new technology and save money and time for taxpayers. So these are things that we have to contend with and also assess. So for us, we have established a platform called the Innovation Lab at Ginny May. And this Innovation Lab is the platform to assess and run all this technology and make sure that we run use cases that are relevant to us and that can demonstrate the saving that we are after. So we are currently conducting few POCs, about like 7 or 8 POCs that deals with technologies such as blockchain, smart contract, rapid analytics, and also machine learning, AI, deep learning, and also some new tools that we have seen in the API and event management. So all these technologies are being assessed. And once we see how we can be introduced or replace our legacy application, then we make the introduction and we follow proper governance. So that's where we are right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that update and insight with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric next. Eric, from your perspective, what emerging technologies in the short and long term are going to help the federal agencies enable and improve their IT modernization?
Yeah, oftentimes we want to focus on low code solutions and frankly, lowering the barrier to entry for automation, lowering the barrier to entry for folks who want to do automated systems, whether that be, robotics or process automation, whether that's something like machine learning, whether it's something more advanced like computer vision, just essentially lowering the barriers to entry for that. So you, with some training, you can really take advantage of those technologies. One of the other things I think that we're really doing across the federal government, and I think we see a lot of our partner agencies at the Centers of Excellence working towards, is getting their IT infrastructure in a place that can actually support that. So a lot of what needs to take place is getting your IT infrastructure, getting your data into the cloud, getting the right tools and technologies, and getting the right skill sets in for agencies so that they're able to really take advantage of some of the new technologies that exist, some of the technologies that have existed for a while but are now becoming, you know, more affordable, more widely used, and more able to be sort of purchased by the government. So we see a big move in not only sort of the forward-facing application direction in terms of application development and making things easier for developers, but we also see a lot of movement on the back end work, which is really setting up agencies to be able to support that new style of technology, that new work, and the new technologies that exist out there. Which, you know, there are new companies coming up every day that have new and interesting capabilities that, you know, we want to make sure that agencies are able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's go ahead and pop up our first poll question. Should be up any second now. There you go. In your opinion, how important are emerging technologies to furthering an agency's IT modernization journey? So as a reminder to the audience, if you'd like to receive your CPE credit, please go ahead and answer that. But let's talk now a little bit about challenges around emerging technologies being enabled throughout the IT modernization process. And Willie, I'm going to turn it over to you next. I know you come from industry, so you have a different perspective than maybe the other two, but what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of challenges when implementing emerging technology for IT modernization?
Well, that's a great question. And I do see it from, I guess, multiple vantage points when I work with a lot of different agencies. And it depends on the technology and what we're implementing. We focus a lot in my space on a lot of the technologies Omar had mentioned, you know, as I see agencies are trying to move towards the cloud. They're looking at serverless. They're looking at containerization. They're looking at microservices. They're looking at, one thing I'm really glad to see is that as agencies are starting to move more to the cloud, they're taking smarter approaches. Early on, I remember people were just talking about lifting and shifting, moving things straight to the cloud, not really thinking towards, you know, why they were moving this data to the cloud, why they were, you know, what benefits they were going to receive. It was just this idea of moving to the cloud. And the thing that I'm seeing though now is that as we are moving more to the cloud, we're taking more advantage of these technologies like microservices and containers and so forth. Complexity is becoming a big issue for agencies because now it's outside of your data centers, outside of your control. So you've got to contend with security. Although you think you're moving to the cloud is going to be inherently more secure, your policies, your procedures, you're not actually designed to run in these environments with the current security set that you have. So that's something that we contend with. And then the amount of complexity grows because you don't have access to the underlying infrastructure, the network, all the things that you used to monitor. Now you've got all these containers that might be spinning up and cloud environments that might be ephemeral coming up and down. So how do you maintain that? So I am a big advocate for AI, and I think Eric, I was listening to you and what you do at GSA, and I am a big proponent of AI. However, one of the challenges that we have is that a lot of agencies, as they start to invest in AI, they're starting to utilize AI. A lot of the AI that we are seeing out there is kind of black box. They get, you know, they've implemented this AI, but they don't understand the underlying algorithms. There's not trust there. There's not trust in the answers. And so I think that's one of the challenges, and I'm always promoting explainable AI, explainability in your AI models, making sure you understand and you have good data that's going in and being fed into your models, which is another problem. So there are a lot of challenges there, but the thing I think is greatly outweighed, those challenges are greatly outweighed by the benefits. because there are an immense amount of benefit from force augmentation, from giving your workforce tools that not replacing them, but giving them tools that are going to make them more efficient, make them be able to focus on their true job set instead of menial jobs that the AI can replace. So I know there's a lot there, but I think I try to always weigh the risk versus the reward. And there are risks in doing this. There are issues and challenges, but I think we need to tackle those in a smart way. And there's going to be a great amount of benefit that comes out of this modernization.
Well said, thank you. And Omar, is there anything you'd like to comment on based on that question or anything Willie just shared?
I agree with Willie. I think for us with the emerging technology and modernization, we have the way GNMA works is that we have our operation and we run our operation with the proper control, the proper governance, and that is key for us. So running operation without disruption, that is key. And that it gets supported by modernization. So we have a modernization roadmap that support and make sure that our technologies are refreshed, the security is managed well, and our hardware is tuned to give us proper operation. And then innovation comes, and innovation brings in things that is high risk, but run in a safe space. And that's the innovation lab. So once we understand what we are getting into, especially with AI is key for us, but we need to make sure that we bring AI, we understand its impact. And for us, we will impact the industry we are in. So our choices needs to be responsible and accountable. So for us, we're looking at ethics in AI. We're looking at trustworthiness in AI. We're looking at the performance of AI, the impact of AI. So these are things that the Innovation Lab has for mandate to evaluate and report to the leadership of GNMA. So definitely I agree, but we cannot ignore this new trends of technology. And we work with the GSA very well. I worked with Eric in the past on data governance. So for us, we look forward to hearing from GSA in terms of their experience and what they have seen in other agencies, because they have that preview, we don't. So for us, working with Eric's organization, working with the partners that we have is key to making any implementation a success and introduce less disruption to our industry. Thank you.
And Eric, are there any challenges that haven't already previously been stated or solutions that you may want to share from your experience implementing at GSA?
Yeah, I think some great points were touched upon. Willie touched upon risk transfer generally, and like how risk transfer works. I think that's a big challenge with modernization is determining how to incentivize risk transfer in a way that's healthy for organizations. We see big challenges with that, especially when, from a GSA standpoint, when we're talking about shared services. And even from an internal agency standpoint, where you're talking about shared services and a centralization of services in some way, that's always a huge challenge. I should touch on the AI as a black box discussion as well. I think that is obviously something, responsible AI writ large, which I think is intentionally a big umbrella for that I'm discussing here. It includes a bunch of sort of buzzwords under AI that I think people are focused on, which I think is a healthy sign. But ultimately, the implementation of responsible AI is a big challenge for agencies just entering into this space. Oftentimes, AI deployments are frankly a lot more simple than, a human-like robot walking around. Like AI deployments are oftentimes, tweaking the weights on a risk algorithm to better determine the risk, and that's a pretty common deployment of machine learning. Things of that nature that are sort of much more innocuous than we think of when we think of like Hollywood AI. Thankfully, oftentimes when we talk about responsible AI in that session or in that segment of work, it's the same as we discuss responsible AI or responsible IT management writ large, right? It's creating the right management structures over your product development. So creating the right like feedback loops within that product development. It's creating a change log. It's creating a log of decisions so that we know why these decisions were made that leads to XYZ outcomes in our AI or automated system applications. And frankly, you know, responsible AI using good IT management principles in itself goes a long way to creating and frankly being thoughtful around responsible AI. And I'm not saying that's a silver bullet, but I'm saying good IT management practices are hard to implement as well. And I think as the federal government writ large, thinking about implementing good IT management practices first and foremost is a heck of a step forward in terms of creating responsible AI across the board. Now there are a lot more sort of nuanced questions that come with making the black box transparent as well, and I don't want to minimize them, but I do want to emphasize that there are things we can do that we all know in terms of creating good IT management practices that do go a long way in this regard. And so there are actionable steps that can be taken that don't require necessarily peeling back a lot of complex AI and algorithmic code.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick, I want to address an audience question that we have. Do any of our panelists have templates for the ATOs already in place for these new modernization technologies that perhaps they could bring back to their own agency, or anything of that nature that you could share with our audience before we continue on in the discussion?
I can jump in here. So we get this question a lot in terms of how we do ATOs, or how to accelerate ATOs across the federal government. And there are some best practices, and I urge you to look at 18F's best practices for ATO, expediting the ATO process. In large part, though, I want to loop back to the risk discussion. ATOs are often, expediency in ATOs are often based around culture. And what is the organization's culture of risk, especially from a security standpoint? And security offices aren't known for being extraordinarily tolerant of risk. So it's about creating relationships and creating a culture within your technology organization that understands and accepts risks that are reasonable, and reasonable is the big question there. How do you define that? And that's on an organization by organization basis, sometimes system by system basis, but defining risk tolerance within each of the systems that you're trying to bring in new technology via ATO is really important. And I know I raised like a big challenge there with culture, but at the heart of expediting ATOs, the challenge really is a cultural one.
Thank you. Anyone else before we continue?
Hey, I agree with Eric. I mean, culture is definitely, the CISO culture, if you will, is important. But for us, the risk still needs to be mitigated and managed. For us, what we are anticipating and hoping to see in the coming years is this platform that comes with ATO, already pre-approved ATO. So we're hoping that will speed the process of approval. So that's one. The cloud that comes with the FedRAMP and GovCloud. We're hoping also that will lead to a speedy ATO process. We spend a lot of time securing ATO. There is a mandate, there is a requirements from the government. Maybe that the process itself needs to be innovative and maybe rethink and come up with something that is manageable. But for us, we are hoping that this new trend of technology security that are coming up will alleviate some of the frustration and also speed the process of getting application in production quite fast. But still, I agree with Eric, that's a culture change and it's going to take time.
And if I might just add to what Omar and Eric were saying, just from an industry standpoint, because in my business and my teams, we deal constantly with ATOs and working with, different agencies to get approvals for technology and product. And I've seen it, I've been doing this for quite some time, and you hear about the ATOs that take 12 months to 18 months. By the time you get the ATO, the mission could already be what you needed it for, could have already been exhausted. But that being said, to Omar's point, we are seeing, and I'm very excited about this, especially I see this more currently on the defense side of things, but as we start to see this idea of the continuous ATO, using technology in software factories and so forth that are automating the process of a lot of the manual steps that we were talking about for the ATO process. A lot of it's just manual checking off. Do you have this? A lot of that can be automated, and it's cutting down the ATO process. And I encourage all agencies to really start looking into that, because it is, if we could take that process down from months to almost a year to where some of the factories I talk to are saying weeks that they would be able to turn around an ATO, that would be, for at least from my standpoint, from an industry standpoint, that would be fantastic from our standpoint.
Thank you all for those insights. We're going to go ahead and pop up our second poll question real quick. In your opinion, how much have emerging technologies helped agencies still modernize as the workforce changes to a hybrid work environment? So for folks at home, please take a moment to consider that. And then we'll go around for each of our panelists. If you could pinpoint the biggest importance behind using emerging technologies to enable IT modernization, what would you say it is? If someone had to take this to higher up or decision maker, what would you really want them to emphasize in order to get things moving and get things approved? Let's start with Omar, please.
I think for us, we have been very successful in introducing few technology that we deem emerging. I mean, RPA is one of them. Also low code, we have done that, and it's in development right now. And machine learning, we have done few development in machine learning that's not very involved, but definitely we are touching on that. So, but it helped that the business was supportive. So for us, we made sure that the business are with us in this journey of selection, of assessing the impact, of making sure that we have demonstrated the benefit that they will get if they go to this change. And low code for us is definitely was a big game changer for us. We have introduced few applications. We have done them faster than anticipated, or using legacy apps. So we have seen this benefit. Also RPA, we have automated few financial processes, and that has been very beneficial for our CFO. So we have seen also benefit there. With the machine learning, we can only imagine the benefits we get from AI, machine learning. So that's an area that we're progressing with, and we are again collaborating with the business, making sure that they are with us in this journey, and that's important. You have to get the business to assist in this adoption, and also emphasize communication. We do that a lot and often, and making sure that there is no surprises. So for us, we have done it, and it's been a very successful journey, and we are seeing the benefits of these emerging technologies. And also the cost. The cost is substantially low than what we have experienced in the past. So these are things that we are definitely looking forward to introducing to our agency.
And Eric, how would you have answered that question?
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to piggyback on Omar and take a similar direction, which is ultimately focusing on solving business problems at the point of need. So oftentimes, emerging technologies, while they might be able to solve some of your challenges, sometimes it's the older technologies that you've already got on board that can actually solve some of your business challenges, and the emerging technologies can be added to them as you grow in maturity with the technology products you're developing. So one of the things we try to focus on with the agencies we work with is getting to the point of need. So where is the business problem? Where does it exist? Who are the folks that who are the folks that face this business problem every day, understanding what those challenges are, and then solving the technology challenges holistically. Oftentimes what we see is the data might be stored in a less than ideal place to be able to use the tools we want. So the first thing we do is automate a data pipeline, get the data stored in a reasonable place, maybe build basic analytic structures on top of it, and then move to machine learning. But you have to start from the very beginning in that sense, and really understand the business need and the potential benefits from working in those areas. And taking a product and user-centered approach to modernization is really important for the work that we do. So creating small products that can be scaled up but solve business needs at the point of need are really crucial. And throughout that process, naturally, you're taking users into account. And working in a way that you're always collecting feedback from your users. You're developing the product in a user-centric way. So that's the one thing that I would mention, and the thing we try to focus on most.
Thank you. And then Willie, I'm gonna have our panel discussion end with you. So please share us your final thoughts on the same question.
Well, and I know we're right up on time here, so I'll just say, first of all, Eric and Omar, you pretty much covered everything I was going to say, but maybe I'll take it from a little bit different tack, since in our industry, what I focus on is really around observability and AI. And one thing that I'm always focused on when I'm talking to agencies, when I'm talking to agency leaders, many things we talk about, but it's also about how the technologies that that I work with, when I'm talking about AI, when I'm talking about observability, how we're here to enable your end users. We're here to enable the workers. We're not replacing people. We're not trying to. I always like to focus on this idea that we're here to augment the workforce, and that you're able to now really also think about training your workforce. And this is one thing I always think about, is that at some point we're going to have to start training the workforce to interact with AI, to be kind of the managers of AI in a sense, because it's not like, I think as Eric mentioned, it's not like the movies. We're not creating Jarvis or Skynet or whatever like that. It's not general AI. There's still a lot of supervision. There's still a lot of understanding that needs to go into how we interpret data, how we explain it to those who are using that data and using those decisions. So I really would like to focus on, with emerging technologies, we're really providing you force multipliers. We're making your jobs, your agencies more efficient. We're helping time to mission, and ultimately we're helping the citizen, because we're bringing them better services. We're bringing them more efficient services. So that's kind of how I would end it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a fantastic discussion. Went by so quickly. So really appreciate you guys. And we hope to have you again soon on another panel. But with that, we are going to be hearing from more of our partners now. And this next talk will be by Robbie Richmond, Jeffrey, is the emerging product specialist at Databases Nutanix. So Robbie, please take it away. Robbie,
oh, thank you, everyone.
You're right. The script is a bit wrong.
No
for a second. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for spending some time today. Go ahead and just have one slide I'm going to talk to as we talk through, what Nutanix is doing around modernization efforts, specifically around databases. So one of the things we've heard from a lot of our customers is, we have call it digital transformation, IT modernization, digital modernization. We have these initiatives, right? And one of the challenges traditionally around databases is they're complex, and they have all the core data in them. So with Nutanix, we wanted to really, how do we automate and simplify database administration on the Nutanix platform, regardless of where it's running? So we started with, at Nutanix, we have a strong suite of core data services that we provide at the back end as infrastructure services within the data fabric. And regardless of where that's running. So that can be on-prem, that can be Nutanix clusters running in the public cloud like AWS, soon to be Azure, so that you can actually have a common data fabric for all your workloads. And upon that data fabric and those core enterprise cloud platform capabilities that we have in Nutanix, we extended that into the database realm with Era. And Era is a database as a service tool set or suite, if you will. And there are really 4 core use cases around that. So we really looked at provisioning, lifecycle management, database cloning, and database data protection across a breadth of database engines. So we support Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, MySQL, Mariah, SAP HANA, and recently added MongoDB as well. So across these services, or across these database engines, we really wanted to address some of these challenges that we were hearing from our customers. And that's, started with, provisioning. How do I provision these environments to standard, right? I want to make sure that when they're built right, whether those are the best practices for running that on a Nutanix platform, as well as integrating those database engine best practices, as well as making sure that I build a standard catalog, or whether that's a software catalog or a compute catalog. So when you think about things like Azure SQL, or you think about things like RDS and AWS, right? How do I get a common set of services that are tailored to my unique needs? They meet my security requirements, my standard build requirements for my database engines. And so with that, we let you define those profiles. What is SQL 2016 or SQL 2019U? Is that Windows 2016 data center with a specific service pack running SQL 2016 with the specific service pack, or SQL 2019 with a specific service pack? You profile that gold image into Era, and now we will re-provision to that standard every time. And with that, we can provision just the database engine, or we can provision just the database, or we can provision the whole stack. And we do that for complex environments. So that can be a multi-node SQL availability group running across multiple locations. So now I can actually spread that cluster, that SQL cluster, between an on-prem and a cloud target, because I have a common data services fabric managing that. Think of a 3-node SQL availability group that's got a node running on-prem with one in maybe an AWS and one in Azure, right? Now I have on-prem plus cross-cloud HA capabilities from a common platform. So, but doing that in a very simple, easy use, delivery model, because those are hard things to build, right? They're complex. The technical challenges are definitely interesting, not only at the infrastructure layer, but then at the data layer, the database layer. So we really wanted to make that very simple to use. And of course, anything we stand up, then we can obviously, tear that back down. So then from there, we looked at the lifecycle management side of things and said, okay, so now we can build it. But what about the time in between? What about patching those environments? So now in that same software profile you build, you can actually publish a patch and say, you know what, I need to upgrade this environment to Service Pack 2, cumulative update 4, pick your variant. You publish that, and now that is part of your software catalog. And someone can come in and say, you know what, I want to upgrade my environment. Or you can push that out on demand or on schedule and say, you know what, I want to upgrade these sets of environments. And with that, because again, we have that core data services platform on the back end, we can do things like automated rollback. So now you're giving your nights and weekends back to your engineers and simplifying these low-level tasks and automating as much of this as possible. So we're taking out the opportunity for error within these processes. From there, we looked at the data protection side of things as well. Again, those robust data services underneath. So we did database integration. For example, I'll talk about SQL Server. We wrote our own BSS requester for SQL Server. So we can actually target databases with a specific SLA. And now I can say, you know what, for this critical database, I want a specific retention for Translog data protection, as well as a daily, weekly, monthly type of schedule. And we'll automatically target that database with that SLA, meet the retention, define what we call a time machine. That time machine is responsible for meeting that SLA, expiring data as it ages, and even replicating it offsite, so you can actually have differing retention between locations. So now you can say, you know what, I want to keep short-term rapid recovery points locally with a very tight RPO, and I want to keep longer-term retention copies on another location. And all of that is managed from a very easy-to-use pane of glass. With that, we then looked at the use cases of database cloning, right? I need to build dev and test environments. I need to build QA environments. How do we make that very, very simple? So again, leveraging the core, we have the abilities to clone databases with zero storage overhead. So I can take a 2 terabyte or a 10 terabyte database, clone that in a matter of minutes onto an existing VM or onto a whole new environment because of our provisioning capabilities. And now I have that capability to spin up these environments on demand. Again, when we talk about that database as a service catalog, now I can actually publish with role-based access control, the capability for someone to log in and actually go in and provision their own clones, right? I can give developers that access to say, you know what, I need a copy of this prod database going downstream, and we can integrate things like pre and post scripts. So now we can mask data. We can take down an app tier maybe if we need to when we refresh a database, and we can schedule all of those activities as well. So now I can say, hey, I need to refresh that database once a week for the next 6 months. We define that schedule. Any pre or post script options that are defined in there for manipulating an application tier or masking data are included as part of that refresh process. And now once a week for the next 6 months, that environment is automatically refreshed with prod type data, with prod performance, without all the storage overhead, without all the touch points of actually getting in there and having to manipulate it manually or manage and maintain all these different scripts that we've done traditionally. And again, without all that storage overhead. So now we're not consuming full production copy storage to manage these downstream environments, because we're handling copy data management far more elegantly. And with that, we can also restore in place, right? So say there is truly a corruption, we can restore any of those databases from their time machine back to the source, even up to and entailing log files. So now I can say, you know what, I've got multiple snapshots a day. Maybe I've got, a snapshot every 4 hours. So I've got 6 full recovery points or synthetic fulls of that database that I can now apply tran log to or archive log to. So now if I'm capturing my archive logs every 30 minutes in between there, I can then roll that database forward. And then on top of that, I can tail the log file and say, hey, you know what, I've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes before my next archive log backup was going to happen. How much data is available on the host that I can effectively roll forward? So really, really tightening up the RPOs and the RTOs, because now it's done in a matter of minutes because it's being done at the storage fabric. We're not dragging data across networks anymore. So really, rounding all of this out so that our customers can easily move their databases into a new environment, onto a new platform with minimal risk, and get a whole new suite of services that they can then modernize that entire database infrastructure with, and provide an on-ramp to managing new services, implementing new services, and have it all done to a standard as a service. So that was a ton of data that I just covered in a very brief amount of time. Are there questions out there that I can answer as we continue through here? No, okay. Well, thank you everyone very much for giving me the time to chat with you for a few minutes.
Thank you so much, Robbie. We really appreciate it. All right, up next, we have another emerging technology talk, this time from Jeff Richard. Jeff is Senior Director, Enterprise Strategy at Veeam Government Solutions. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about conversations that we at Veeam Government Solutions have had with our federal customers about what's getting in the way, what is stopping digital transformation initiatives that they are working on. I think we've all seen a lot of quotes like this one from Lieutenant General Barry Shwedo. This was in Accenture's IT Vision for 2021 for federal government report that came out recently. I've had conversations like this repeatedly with folks at all levels of government, including state and local, right? The 4-year transition plan to remote work that we had in place, we put in place in 4 weeks or sometimes even in 4 days. With that said, when we talk with customers and with industry analysts, there are some pretty consistent themes that we hear both about the direction that federal organizations are going to be taking toward modernization in 2022, and what some of the barriers that there are to overcoming that remain in place. When we talk about trends, to no one's great happiness, unfortunately, COVID pandemic response is still one of the things that we're all going to be dealing with, both the remote work mandates, the remote citizen services mandates, and everything else that goes along with a slowly unfolding public health crisis. This has driven a lot of IT modernization, and it will continue doing so. But of course, modernization is still restrained by budget, as it always has been. None of us has gotten unlimited budgets to do the things that we might want to do around remote citizen services, around robotic process automation, around all the other, AI, machine learning, all the other things we've heard about this morning. And there's still security and governance that we have to think about, and that's in the newspapers every day. We at Veeam actually are pretty data driven. We do the largest survey done about data protection done by anyone, including analyst firms. We do that every year. The respondents are worldwide, mostly large organizations, including a lot of public sector. And they don't know that it's Veeam asking the questions. So it's a very unbiased survey of where folks are going on the modernization side. I'm going to share one result with you from last year's survey. We got 1,800 that responded. And again, the survey took place late in 2020. It's the 2021 survey. And we asked folks, what, if anything, is slowing down your efforts to modernize IT, to do digital transformation? And in another question, we asked, did COVID accelerate it? And of course, the answer is yes. But on the flip side, COVID has also put the brakes on some things, particularly maybe mission critical transformations, where management said, whoa, there's too much risk to the mission. We can't do this in the middle of everything else that we're doing, right? The other things boil down to things that we've heard about already today. Dependence on legacy technology stacks, right, can slow things down. Not having the skills on your team for IT transformation that you need, lack of money, lack of time. And when we boil these down in talking with customers about this, basically this boils down to 4 roadblocks. There's lack of IT skills and transformation expertise already present on your staff. There is legacy system dependencies that slow things down because I can't just, snap my fingers and move all the data and all of the decades of coding and dependencies that I've got in place up to a new platform easily. There is lack of time and budget, of course. And then there's risk, and we've heard a fair bit about risk in both the last talk that we heard and the panel discussion before that. The risk boils down in this case to lack of senior management buy-in. Management doesn't want to change things that they might not perceive as broken because of the risk, and of course the COVID effect. So we at Veeam are an enterprise backup company, and what we do, generally speaking, is de-risk the adoption of new technologies. And we do that in a couple of ways. We do it by making sure that no matter if you move to new technologies, if you move to container-based, Kubernetes-based infrastructure so that you can take advantage of software factories like we heard about a few minutes ago with Platform One and Kessel Run and others that are out there, so that you can take advantage of software as a service. I have had multiple conversations with federal customers who said, we piloted our Microsoft 365 migration, but we didn't actually go forward with it until we could show leadership that if we needed to, we could get the data back down, because they knew they had to be responsive to security investigations or FOIA requests or all the other things that mean that you might need to be able to go back in time, even in a SaaS environment, 3 years, 5 years, however many years. We also help with getting the data actually up into the cloud, because Veeam has for many years supported backing up data to the cloud. And we have multiple customers who have accomplished their infrastructure as a service migration just by essentially copying backups up to the cloud, keeping that refreshed, testing the migration, how it would work in the cloud, and then flipping the switch once they've done that. If you're not familiar with Veeam, a lot of folks know us as a VMware backup solution, and we have led in that space for about the past dozen years. But we also do hypervisor native backups for other on-prem platforms, including Nutanix, like we just heard about. We're a big partner with Nutanix. And we do hypervisor native backups for all the leading cloud platforms. So if you've moved up into Azure, if you've moved into AWS, if you've moved into GCP, you can back that data up, and maybe most importantly, you can get it cross-cloud, because cloud outages do happen, and you can get it back on-prem so that you've always got an option without having to scramble or find additional budget to pay big egress fees if you want to change the direction that you're going in. There's a lot we could talk about here. A lot of Veeam development goes into increasing the number of apps that we support on the top line. I've already mentioned Microsoft 365. We just announced that we will be supporting Salesforce. If any of you are using Salesforce for Mission CRM, and a lot of federal customers are, we'll be supporting backup of that. We also integrate broadly with your existing tech stacks on-prem with storage arrays and with sending data up to the cloud for migration or just for disaster recovery or DR orchestration. We're pretty good at this. We don't just talk a good game. Veeam has been in the leaders quadrant of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for the last 5 years. We've actually led in ability to execute for the last 2 of those years. So I know we're on a tight timeline. I want to make sure that I honor that and let folks take a lunch break. But if you've got questions, please do reach out to Veeam Government Solutions. We have over 1,400 active federal customers, and many, if not most of those, are actively using us to get data up into the cloud and to make sure that they de-risk the cloud migration that they have already done or that they're considering right now. So thanks very much for your time, and I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. All right, up next, we have another panel discussion, this time moderated from Melissa Harris from Government CIO. Melissa, over to you. Yes.
Hello. My camera will not turn on. Is that okay? Oh, no, there we go. Sorry, everyone. Great. Thank you, Kirsten. Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Harris from Government CIO Medium Research, and I will be moderating this next panel. Before we begin, I just want to encourage the audience to submit questions of your own in the Q&A section of this platform. We'll be going through them throughout this panel. So please send them in as we go. Please also remember to answer the poll questions as we go through them to ensure that you get your CPE credits. I would now like to introduce our panelists. If you would like to give a wave when I call your name, please go ahead. We have Stephen Olick, Value Stream Lead at U.S. Air Force's Platform One, as well as Michael Cruz, ForcePoint's Enterprise User and Data Protection Director. Let's start with some opening remarks from each of you. Can you go into what each of you are working on at your organizations or agencies, and perhaps what some of your priorities are? Michael, would you like to start?
Sure. So a couple things we're working on here at ForcePoint. First is we're working on not only looking at the adoption of zero trust across all networks to include classified and unclassified networks, how we can take existing technologies and supplement or complement those technologies within organizations, and how we can go beyond our traditional security models of just, for example, giving people access to VPN once they get inside your walls. We want to continuously monitor and vet individuals. So when they're accessing data or systems, at the time they're accessing the data and systems, we know what the risk level is. So we can make those clear delineations at the time they're accessing data, at the time they're accessing systems, what is the risk level at? So that's what we're working on today. We're working with partnered with a lot of companies out there and a lot of different organizations, and it's an exciting time to be in this space.
Definitely. And Stephen, over to you.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Olick. I'm a current civilian with the Air Force. I've been working here at DoD's Platform One, which is an Air Force material kind of organization here in San Antonio, Texas, but literally virtual across the 48 contiguous states that we have. I lead one of our value streams called Party Bus. So we're a platform as a service, kind of DevSecOps pipeline containerization capability for folks that don't have inherent organic DevSecOps kind of SRE type, engineers and developers on their staff. We do that for them. The folks that have potentially brownfield or greenfield apps that they want to bring to production, we'll deploy for them. Conversely, from the work, we're really about culture change inside of the DoD and the Air Force specifically. How do we do software better? We think we have one way of doing it. We partner with many, many other organizations as well, to include, it was mentioned just a few minutes ago, Kessel Run, and there's a few other software factory and centers of excellence around the country that we also tend to partner with and enable our platform for them to be able to dev on. I would say some of the priorities that we're really looking at is the future of work. Our organization being as unique as it is, we are taking a virtual first mentality. And what does that mean to the government? Well, it disrupts everything, as you can imagine. You know, not having a brick and mortar office I got to come to 8 to 5 every day. You know, because of COVID, we've had to flex, but we want to continue that way and moving forward. We were already that way prior to the pandemic, but we're just trying to make a business case not only for ourselves, but for the rest of the Air Force to adopt and to learn from, that you can deliver value and get work done, or get stuff done, is what we would like to say, sitting anywhere and everywhere that you need to be. And I would even echo our current material leader. He has the premonition that, look, the office is your house, number one, but the office space that I'm sitting in right now, which is in, you know, downtown San Antonio, this should be where you are drawn to, where you want to engage others, collaborate, get work done physically in a variety of different spaces, either, you know, cordoned off, solo and quiet, or out in the open for those sparked kind of conversations that you can imagine an office lends to give you. So that's what we are and who we are, and be open to answering questions and providing more information on Platform One.
Fantastic. And as we sort of just went through here with a little bit of our opening remarks, there are a lot of different best practices and technologies that you guys are focusing on. So based on your specific activities and work that you're doing at your agencies and organizations, can you share what maybe some of those best practices that you recommend for other agencies to take on based on what you're seeing? Stephen, would you like to continue?
Yeah, you know, it's, for me, what works really well for us is ensuring that we have rituals and we stick to them. You know, when you talk agile and all of the buzzwords that are out there with manifestos and having charters and having that kind of shared understanding at all times, that's critical, especially if you're going virtual first. You know, since we're all in different time zones and logging on to different, you know, environments that we run, we need to have a center source of truth. I can't say that we're perfect on communication and ensuring everybody's up to speed all the time, but what we tend to do is use, you know, Slack-like capabilities. Not to say Slack is the technology we use to communicate with, but those kind of technologies help immensely to give everybody that gravity center to come to, and throw the funny meme out there, the dad joke of the day, whatever. I would say secondly to that is, you know, ensuring that folks on the team, you're pulling them together with you, and you don't have like the handful, you know, kind of isolating themselves from the rest of the team. We do that via our daily stand-ups or any other kind of retrospectives or sprint planning activities that we do. But if people are struggling, you know, having the open candor and conversations amongst the team is critical when you're trying to do what we're trying to do, spread out and not being able to physically see each other. So those are two things I'd just like to highlight. Kick it over to Michael.
So yeah, well, I agree with Stephen in all that he said about increasing the communication, but I also believe there needs to be a level of security as we are increasing our collaboration. We need to do it securely. There is a trade-off. I mean, if you look at security, people say security never makes money. And that's true. Security is not a money maker. Security is usually the people that are, you know, asking for money to secure your infrastructure. So what we need to do is balance what security is and how much security we're applying to, you know, protecting Slack channels, you know, to ensure that Slack channels are not communicating information that should not be communicated across, whether it's, you know, kind of classified, unclassified, but controlled information, whether it's classified information gets put into these Slack channels. We need a way to have that visibility, but we also need a balance with friction. I mean, what Stephen was saying point blank is that if we introduce more friction into a user's ability to collaborate, into the ability to communicate, into the ability to be part of the team, we will force users to go outside your approved processes. And that's a danger zone. So putting together security tools, bringing the security tools in place with these collaboration tools, but we do not need to increase the friction that a user is. When they're logging into a system from 3 different sites, they don't need to log in 4 different times. They should be able to log into one time that should be perpetrated across all the IT systems and that they're good to go. And then the proper security tools are applied based upon a person's access and based upon a person's risk at that time. So it's a balance, friction versus security. We have to make sure there's a right balance moving forward.
I'll do if I'm allowed to, just do a +1 to that. Michael, you're spot on. What I didn't caveat was, we do have a center of mass kind of chat kind of collaboration tool, but we also in the government, we use different impact levels. So depending on the type of information that we're trying to construe to our teammates, documentation that we're sharing, code snippets, whatever, we do have an impact 2, an impact 4, and even an impact 5 capability. And we're constantly beating the drum of, look, whatever you want to talk to, potentially don't overclassify, but ensure what you want to discuss is at the appropriate level. So thanks for bringing that up, Michael. That's spot on.
Definitely. And, those takeaways there, cohesion, consistency, communication, and cybersecurity all make perfect sense. Before we jump into the next question, I'd like to bring up one of the poll questions. Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind. There we go. So this question asks, what is your top challenge for IT modernization? A lot of these answers definitely align with what this conversation's kicked off on. So interesting to see what people will bring up.
So yeah, it's not terrible.
All right, it looks relatively even across the board, but resources and costs definitely come up. So that's big. Although resources with people is also big, as we were talking about here. Gotta keep people in mind as well as security. So definitely aligning with what we're talking about here. So as people are sort of juggling all of these different priorities and have all these different concerns in mind, let's talk strategy. So modernization requires some strategy, not just these everyday best practices. So what strategies would you recommend for agencies to use when looking to further their IT modernization? And how can we look at that big picture view to inform those daily best practices you were talking about?
I guess I'll start.
Oh, yeah,
Let me
go
start
ahead.
this one. Might as well start to kick it off. How about that? One of the things that we talked about is that modern IT modernization does not include a rip and replace of every existing technology that is in place today. I think we get caught up too as an industry and as, especially in the Department of Defense, the next shiny object that comes about. Now, there are certain technologies that need to be updated that maybe are not meeting the requirements, the intended purpose, maybe the requirements change and maybe the mission change. So of course, you need to look for technologies that are improving your ability to, communicate, streamlining your IT systems and streamlining your security. But you do need I like to refer to as a kind of an open kind of technical ecosystem that takes advantage of the good components of the government, good components of industry, and complements it with other industry points. In any technology, whether you bring to, has to have the ability to integrate with these different platforms, integrate with these different systems. I mean, if you look at what ForcePoint's trying to do as we move forward, is that we're looking to integrate with different partners from ICANN world, different partners from, the SOAR world, different partners from your identity management world, and then bringing all those different, in the past, they were stovepiped channels together to give you visibility across your whole enterprise from a data point of view and a user point of view. So I think one of the things I would tell organizations is that look across, identify what's working, what's not working, and then systematically bring in it. Don't go a whole rip and replace because it's not going to be effective. It's going to impact your mission. It's going to put more friction in users because you're going to changing processes. It's going to increase the risk of security as well in cybersecurity. So that's kind of a thing I saw, across the industry. So I'll just kind of let Stephen answer.
Yeah, I think from my perspective and what I've seen specifically inside the federal government is that budgets are shrinking and we have to do more with less. And I know that that's an oxymoron because you literally can't do more with less. But in saying all of that, I think what Platform One tends to disrupt is, we're all about open source. We think there's great ideas out there everywhere, and we have those capabilities available to folks to either onboard into their environment or not. More strategically inside of an organization, I think if you can wrap your mind around the idea that IT departments should not be separate from the business, and then we're talking IT modernization, let's call it business modernization. There should be a why behind every investment dollar or cent spent on any kind of technology that's enabling value or mission to be accomplished. I see this natural shift of the IT organization inside of any kind of agency or even private organization. There's a natural merge coming together when you talk the low code, no code solutions that are out there, allowing anybody in an organization to develop any kind of app or capability, albeit that has to be maintained, but the chains are off, so to speak, that you don't just nudge a requirement over the fence to IT to deliver a solution that goes back to the business to enable them to get work done. It's just not, that's not the reality anymore. And so I would say to end that point is there should be a why. You should app rationalize constantly. Don't be afraid to turn things off that aren't delivering the value any longer. But to Mike's point, there's got to be something there to either replace or, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's a fine balance. It's not perfect when you're doing IT strategy or modernization strategy. But I naturally just see the two coming together.
And it's kind of interesting Stephen said that, is that if you look at what he's doing from Platform One, which is incredible, is, enabling users to access data anywhere, anytime, right? We don't go behind the four walls of a customer. We don't have defined fences, but with that ability to access data anywhere, anytime, it comes with a little bit of risk. So I think we just need to be cognizant of that risk and say, hey, what are we doing to continuously vet somebody, continuously monitor an individual? We want people to work anywhere. We want people to work, at any time, because it's going to enable us. What the number one thing this poll said was lack of resources. I mean, if we can enable people to work anytime, anywhere, we can increase our pool of resources, our experts that we're lacking today. ForcePoint is no different than the United States government, no different than Platform One. We struggle to get resources. We struggle to get good people. So if we can enable people to work at ForcePoint, work at Platform One at any time and anywhere, we can increase our pool of available experts, and we can be more efficient, which will reduce the ultimate goal of any IT modernization is to decrease costs, right? Decrease costs. If you ask a CISO or a CIO to say, what's your main business outcome? There has to be some value. It could be reduce price, reduce cost, reduce operational cost, increase access, comes with some cost as well. So keeping those business values in mind, I think is a key component, because I think we do not do enough of that from a program team. We just do not.
Definitely. I agree with all of your points. They're fantastic. And they sort of, go into the question of culture and workforce. A lot of this can't be done. We can get all the technology we want. We could open up our data, but if we can't change culture and the way the workforce functions, then we can't quite get to the modernization we want. So that brings me to the next question, which is about that culture and workforce. This is especially becoming apparent that we need to make a shift with COVID-19. Like Stephen said, there's a reduction of brick and mortar there. So in what ways have your organizations had to adapt in terms of the workforce and culture? And how has the changes we've seen recently around this impacted your IT modernization?
Yeah, I'll begin. So it hasn't impacted us as much as you would think. I'm going to put my hat on from my previous job that I just came from. I was with the U.S. Army, literally out in Europe, and it was a complete disruption. We had to look at ourselves, from the trees and look at the forest and remember 2 years ago we were not using any kind of virtual capabilities such as this with a webcam and talking through little screens. Like, it's just not what we were doing. So when you talk culture, you get folks potentially in the government, and I would assume in private industry, but I'll speak from my lens, folks to get very comfortable with what they know and what they're used to. as far as conversing, getting work done, and just the daily grind of work, and what their normal had been. When we gave them new tools, such as what the government rolled out with Microsoft Teams and 365 and all of those things that allow us to, I talked about the chains coming off and giving the power of information and capability to the users. A lot of people had the giant eye stare, like, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I get it to work? How do I put the app on my phone? Like we were having to use the folks that we had as early adopters and those evangelists and like tap into that passion that they have for new technology, new capability, and go and help these folks. And so that intrinsic motivation was huge. That's something that we had to leverage because we wouldn't have been successful without it. And then secondly, now that I'm on platform one, what's eye-opening to me is that this is the normal here. And I think we're going against the grain because the entire federal government itself is just not, we're not at that level yet of, being able to do what we're doing today. But we're getting there. And I think what we do as far as platform one is concerned is show that you can work from anywhere, you can use virtual capabilities, and you can still get work done, given the right mindset and buy-in from all those that are in the organization. I'm really interested to hear what my classes say from a private sector perspective for sure.
I think the challenge for us, in all honesty, one of the way is unmanaged devices. If you look at what we're doing here, it's been always easy to, if I give myself a computer, right? My company provides me a computer, they put the appropriate tools and technologies on, whether it's IT process, it's all on the computer. And the same thing for my device at phone. If I have a company phone, they have all the right to monitor this. But then when we went remote, then it was harder to get equipment to people, right? If my computer went down, the company would go, hey, just use your private computer until we can get you a computer. So now I'm putting company proprietary information on my private computer. I'm accessing company information on an unmanaged phone or unmanaged iPad or a tablet. So how do we allow people to use unmanaged devices and then still get the visibility, what they're doing with our data in our technology and stuff? That has been a big challenge because we also, in the commercial world, you have this, just in the government, you have privacy laws, you have civil liberties. I do not want to monitor Michael Krause's activity when he's just, for example, corresponding with my family. But if I'm accessing a document from ForcePoint that is IP, I want to know how I'm accessing that and what I'm doing with that data. Am I taking that data off that ForcePoint system, moving it to my public system, and then putting it up in my cloud, in my personal cloud? Well, that would seem like a high risk activity. So how do you balance, again, it's not only security, privacy. Manage and unmanaged devices, to me, has been the biggest challenge. Yes, we increase capacity of our IT systems because we have more workers working from home. So we have to increase our VPNs and we have to get our public access. That comes with that part of being remote. But to me, the challenge is having that same visibility you would have on managed devices as unmanaged devices, especially in a world where we're increasing, our, capacity for more remote workers.
Certainly. And, building that culture around cybersecurity is something that's really big right now. And COVID definitely brought new challenges in terms of that. So that's a great point, Michael. I think this would be a great moment to bring up the next poll question, Alyssa, which is around zero trust in cybersecurity as well. So how essential is zero trust in your IT modernization efforts?
I'm hoping this is very important. Okay, important. I like it. All right, good. I like that answers.
At least no one answered unimportant. So happy to see that everyone's really getting onto the zero trust bandwagon. Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder too, to please submit questions in the Q&A. We want to make sure that we're addressing things that you're curious about, not just the three of us talking here. We're all here to talk to you. as we segue into the next question, obviously the theme of this panel is the future of IT modernization. And so while lots of agencies are on their own modernization journeys right now in different stages, there's some aspects that we could look at in the future to pack into our modernization transformations today. So where do you see the future of IT modernization going, and what technologies, tools, practices, methods, et cetera, will be useful for helping us get there?
I'll start. So I think one of the things that I see in IT modernization is there's this buzz around SaaS, software as a service, and I think we will have more of a hybrid approach. I think organizations, whether you're government or commercial or industry, believes in some information sitting within the cloud and utilizing the cloud where it makes a significant impact to their business, whether it's a cost impact, whether it's a resource impact, whether it's a technology impact. But I think there will always be a place for on-premise technologies. I think there will be always a place for tech customers that are not bought into cloud infrastructure wholeheartedly and will never buy into it, whether it's that they have more sensitive information. I do a lot of work with insider threat programs and user activity monitoring programs. We've talked about moving people into the cloud. We've talked about moving that data into the cloud. And a lot of our organizations are not comfortable with that. They see the cloud as potentially an issue with security, especially as they're putting significant private information, IP information, and they would want to keep that behind the four walls. Now that might change in the near future, but I don't see that changing for the next 5 years. I think there will be a blend between on-premise and there will be a blend between taking advantage of the SaaS environments cloud. I also think from Zero Trust will be a major player into anything we're doing with the IT modernization. It just has to be. I think the ways of the past of just giving somebody VPN access and all of a sudden they have access to everything without continuously vetting, without continuously monitor them as they change their risk profile, I think is a mistake by our organization. So I think you're going to see Zero Trust combined with on-premise and SaaS, kind of part of the modernization. And then finally, I think one of the big points that we talked about is the remediation, the mitigation. We do need to take action. We can't continue to develop products that do not have any actionable intelligence derived. It becomes basically another bookend, another paperweight. Any technology that we have, whether it's a security technology that we're looking at IT modernization, needs to have actions, needs to be integrated with a SOAR, needs to be integrated with maybe a data leak prevention or other edge protection technologies or endpoint technologies. You need to develop those user risk scores, develop those risk identities, and then be able to take action on those risk identities. You just can't sit and wait. Sitting and waiting is not an answer. You have to be able to take action. At the same time, you have to respect the privacy and reduce the friction. So I said a lot there and I'll be quiet. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, I'm going to make mine more about the people. And I alluded to it earlier, but I think organizations, membership and users, either they're internal users or external users, in general, are getting smarter, more capabilities in the palm of their hands, at their fingertips, and they're learning more tools and skills that they are bringing to the table that aren't necessarily part of the IT organization. You could term them shadow IT, but again, I'm seeing past that. I really do believe like it's one and the same. So what does that mean going forward? The low code, no code solutions that are out there today, some of them are SaaS products, some of them are the homegrown kind of organic tools and capabilities that organizations build for themselves. Like that to me is what I would be putting all my attention into. Conversely to that, I think knowledge management as a process and practice is something that I wish that we enabled and highlighted more inside of organizations. And I say that because I'm in a military organization, and knowing that folks are rolling off if they wear a green suit every 2 to 3 years, all the information that they create, share, get after, and potentially retain is lost and or not transferred to the right folks as they depart the organization. And we're constantly in this relearning do loop over and over and over. One thing that Platform One is really trying to get after is using kind of a wiki-based environment. We use a tool called Confluence that Atlassian creates that allows us at least to mind dump the things that we're doing, and in real time give the power to folks to use that, edit it, and keep it current. You can imagine though, without good content management and knowledge management practices in the background, it becomes just a blob in and of itself and unmanageable and really non-value add, and people, tend to not use long-term. But I think those two areas are what, it's about the people to me. I think it isn't the magic of IT just making things happen and giving it back to the organization. The users, either internal or external, are part of that. And then the knowledge itself of being identified, captured, and retained and transferred to those folks, that has to become a thing going forward for us all to be successful.
Fantastic. We're almost out of time, but it looks like someone put some sort of question of sorts in the chat. I'm going to try to translate it here, but it looks like it's around senior staff and getting leadership buy-in, especially around confusing technologies. So do you guys have any parting words on those before we head out today?
Yeah, top down. I'll just say that, top down. If you don't get, despite the best practice of people on the bottom pushing up, you don't have top-down support for anything, whether it's IT modernization, technologies, or security, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. I mean, I think you're just going to be, having that leadership buy-in and making sure you can relate the business value to the leader and showing them why it's important for them. This is going to save you money, or this is going to secure your environment more. If you can show that to them, then they become your champion. They become your champion, and they go out and get the budgets, and they fight for you whenever the budget lines come up. So, being able to, go back to what Stephen said, being able to show that business value is to the leaders. It should be one of your primary objectives. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, and one thing that we've done, and I've even seen the Army do, they've actually had a senior leader, a general, commit a line of code in real time inside of the software factory physical environment. Like that to me is the cool factor. You got to get their hands on the products and tools that you're trying to sell them and show them, Michael said it perfectly, show them the why. We've taken it a step further. So when we have the VIPs come in, it's too easy to pull up the code in our front end p1.dso.mil website. They commit a line, it changes in real time up there, and they're like floored because we can do stuff like that. To me, that's how you get after that. And then ultimately, if you don't have that person, Michael did say it, it's just so hard to go against the grain without someone at the very top levels fighting your cause as well.
That was such a great example, Stephen, and I think a really great way to end today's conversation. So thank you, Stephen and Michael, for sharing your thoughts and insight today. Kristen, back to you. Oh, Kirsten, sorry.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks to the panelists. All right, so next up, we have another technology talk, this time from Bill Herod. Bill is the public sector CTO over at Avanti. Bill, over to you.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. Let me get my screen up here. All right. Are you able to see that?
Looks good.
Terrific. IT modernization in the federal government requires harnessing automation, innovation, and emerging technologies to support the workplace of today and position federal IT for secure operations into the future. Good afternoon. My name is Bill Herod, and I'm the public sector CTO for Avanti. Avanti is a US-based enterprise software company with a focus on helping your agency manage and secure your applications, data, devices, and assets, leveraging automation and artificial intelligence platforms to secure your applications and data, starting with the user and their devices, their connections to the data center or cloud or compute platform, and back again. Security, risk-based vulnerability management, conditional access control, hyperautomation, and user experience managed end to end. In today's everywhere workplace, and this was mentioned on the presentation that they just gave, in today's everywhere workplace, where we no longer have the traditional network perimeter, our users, devices, applications, and workloads are everywhere. In the data center, in the cloud, in transit across the internet, and in the palm of your employee's hand. Your employees have come to rely on their ability to join a teleconference, review a document, respond to email, and access their work applications and data right from their mobile device. And, oh, by the way, they also want to be able to text with their kids, order dinner, and check their personal email. A few years ago, this focus on the user experience was considered to be optional and a nice-to-have capability. But the workforce of today and tomorrow expects this. Your employees have become accustomed to the work from everywhere ease of use and intuitive application-centric experience. It's our joint responsibility to secure, manage, and provide a seamless level of service to secure and enable the agency's mission through IT modernization and to meet our users' expectations. This modernization and enablement also has an impact on IT, though. Supporting the everywhere workforce comes with requirements for increased security. As I said, the traditional security controls, focusing on building a strong network perimeter, for example, are no longer effective. Today, we have an exponentially larger list of devices than we did prior to the pandemic. And our IT team must now support those devices. The pace of change has accelerated, and the rapidly increasing threat landscape means our security controls are also becoming much more complex. Now, after more than 20 months of this pandemic, we recognize that we will continue to support either a fully remote or at best a hybrid workforce for the foreseeable future. Our employees, contractors, and suppliers are working from everywhere. In March of 2020, almost overnight, businesses and government agencies transitioned to nearly 100% remote telework. The sudden change in where our employees were working from brought about challenges for connectivity and secure access. How users are connecting, what equipment they are using, and where they're connecting from all had to be supported without notice and often without adequate time for planning and testing. Increased demands for VPN capacity and routing, access to applications, some of which are on premise and some of which are in the cloud, all had to be supported virtually overnight. And for many agencies, the rapid transition to a fully remote workforce also came just as the agency was moving to Office 365, which complicated their access requirements, identity federation, and secure VPN capabilities. Many agencies were also faced with an influx of new and personally owned devices, resulting in an extensive new threat surface with previously unknown devices now accessing federal government networks and applications. According to a McKinsey report, COVID-19 accelerated the digital transformation by 7 years. This digital transformation is a large part of what is driving the federal IT modernization. And we're likely never going back to the way it was prior to 2020. This digital transformation has also shown us that our cybersecurity policies have not been able to keep up. In order to support the new devices and innovation, including an app-centric workplace, government agencies need to modernize security, management, and service infrastructure as well. It's painfully clear that cyber criminals and nation-state sponsored attacks are doing everything they can to exploit the vulnerabilities that have resulted from this shift to working from everywhere and accessing applications and data that reside anywhere. These threat actors are launching phishing attacks on individuals and organizations to gain access to your critical resources. DHS recently said that as agencies are improving their cybersecurity protections and access controls, nation-state threat actors and cyber attackers are focusing even more on spear phishing, targeting specific individuals within an organization to gain an entry foothold. DHS also said that these spear phishing attacks are not necessarily focused on high-profile or senior executives. Rather, they're focused on individuals for which they have sufficient information to tailor an individualized and enticing phishing email. The bottom line, spear phishing is not necessarily targeting the biggest fish, just the easiest to catch. And that's a scary fact. Our users don't recognize phishing emails. A recently published research report indicated that 97% of users are not able to recognize sophisticated phishing attacks, and that 95% of all successful attacks are directly targeted phishing attacks, the very spear phishing attacks that DHS called out. And just look at the headlines. The ransomware attacks that shut down the Colonial Pipeline and JBS, the world's largest meat processor, were phishing attacks that resulted in credential compromises and massive disruptions from ransomware. Add to that increased attacks based on Microsoft Exchange Server, Print Spooler, and other zero-day and zero-click attacks, including Pegasus, which is reported to have recently infected devices for US Department of State. And add to that the impact that the SolarWinds compromise has had on federal agencies. All of this is part of your agency's rapidly expanding threat landscape. Let's face it, your agency's risk has never been higher. And addressing that risk by solely relying on traditional protections like passwords and perimeter security controls is reckless. This is exactly why we need to look to IT modernization to significantly improve our cybersecurity protections, harnessing automation and emerging technologies, including AI, to accelerate our protections and kill chain for attacks. Federal agencies have been trying to improve our resilience against these escalating attacks for more than a decade. In 2012, DHS created the CDM program, Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation, to help agencies improve reporting and sharing information about cyber threats and attacks, and to help with the deployment of stronger controls to protect federal agencies' networks, data, and resources. And CDM focused on these capabilities. What is on the network? Who is on the network? What is happening on the network? And how is data being protected? Then in 2014 came the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, what we know as FISMA. That requires the head of each agency to report to DHS on the cybersecurity protections they've implemented. And with updates in 2016 and 2019, that now includes that agencies report on their adherence to the NIST risk management framework and cybersecurity controls defined by NIST 800-37 and NIST 800-53. The FISMA metrics and security controls focus on identify, creating an inventory of hardware and software assets, identifying those devices so that we don't have unidentified and unknown devices on the network, protecting those assets, detect, which is discovering security events in a timely manner, responding to the events to determine the scope of the attack, data loss, and necessary corrective actions, and then recovering from the attack and determining the root cause of the attack and how to implement strong controls to prevent similar attacks in the future. If we overlay the FISMA metrics on the CDM capabilities, we find a significant overlap in what we are tracking and reporting on, becomes a bit of an eye chart. And while this is important, it has proven to be insufficient. And now we're also facing a whole new series of requirements for enhancing cybersecurity and reporting on our agency's progress. Among the new and emerging requirements are CMMC, a series of OMB memos, President Biden's executive orders, and new guidance from NIST and DHS for our IT modernization efforts, including requirements for adopting a zero trust architecture and software supply chain requirements. So how does addressing the increasing list of requirements and this ever expanding threat landscape and the escalating attacks while maintaining and servicing our IT infrastructure, how do we address that? This is what federal IT modernization is really all about. So let's go back to the basics, starting with what is on the network. So what if we could truly automate the discovery of everything on our network? Mobile devices, IoT, traditional endpoints, and everything between those endpoints and where the data and applications reside, whether it's in the cloud or on-premise, anywhere. And then what if we could truly implement effective controls for conditional access based on attributes that we can automate and make available for real-time authorization decisions, defining a new software-based perimeter in the zero trust model that is enforced by microsegmentation, and authorization is governed by continuous authentication and authorization at a highly granular level. What the previous model just showed is that many people are now looking at how we implement a zero trust architecture. And next, we understand who is on the network by taking a fresh look at identity. But it's more than just the identity of the user. It's the identity of the user, their device, and the source of every API request, and base the continuous authentication of those identities by binding the user, their device, their credential, and environmental attributes all together for policy and role-based conditional access decisions. Next, we include what's happening on the network, behavioral analytics, automated service management to improve the self-service experience, and to minimize the time to repair. Automating the time to repair and have it fixed before human interaction would even know that it was broken. And a better understanding of the risk and assets to understand the context of any failure or attack. And understanding how we protect the data wherever it resides, adopting that zero trust architecture with no inherited trust and providing just-in-time access to applications and data, all of which are encrypted end to end. This IT modernization is not a future dream. It's possible today. I'm Bill Harrod, Public Sector CTO at Avanti. Ask me how to help your agency achieve this type of automated, innovative IT modernization. Thanks very much. Back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate it. And next up, we have our final panel discussion for the day. If our panelists could please come on camera, we'll have you introduce yourselves. All right, let's get started with Eric, please. If you could please let us know who you are, what agency you're with, and what you do at your agency.
Sorry, I just closed the camera instead of opening it. Good morning, or good morning for me anyways. Hope you guys are having a good day. My name is Eric Retching. I'm with the United States Air Force in one of the program executive offices. We handle a bunch of business and enterprise systems and attempting to modernize not only those systems, but also the processes that we use for the software development lifecycle. So we're early on in our agile stage, but getting into that, we're realizing in order to advance, we probably need to adopt DevSecOps. So that's how I got a job. And so my team and I are attempting to advance that across our organization. We don't necessarily do the DevSecOps, but it's assisting those teams in order to adopt those methodologies and get their agile maturity up, improving their deliveries, capability deliveries, the quality, reliability, and security of such.
Thanks, Eric. And then Ian, over to you next.
Yes, my name is Ian Anderson, and I'm currently a lead DevSecOps engineer with Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren. And I'm actually at their dam neck and activity down in Virginia Beach. So for the past couple of years, I've been working with NSWC Dahlgren to really take a look at, how can we, bring DevSecOps or these, new best practices to our warfare center. So recently, after, doing kind of a trial period with a couple of projects, we are now standing up our own software factory that is enterprise-wide for the Warfare Center. Now, it seems pretty straightforward. You stand it up, let the teams come in, and the best practices happen. What's very interesting with Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren, as most warfare centers within the Navy, is that we're a working capital fund. So the government only gives us enough money to actually just really keep the lights on and say we have a building somewhere. So all of our money comes in from the projects that we can take on. And they don't have to be specifically Navy projects, it could be Air Force, Army, whoever within the federal space that thinks we can do the project and has the money for us to take that on. So that's very interesting in that the requirements come from these various projects. So you have some teams that are they get the requirements. They the project sponsor wants them to do these best practices. They say you must do these things. And they're operating on that. Well, you have older projects where these ideas weren't present before, and whether it be the money or the sponsor doesn't really want to do a lot of changes. You have those teams that aren't doing the best practices. So you get people who know everything, can tell you the entire process all the way down to the other end where they're asking you, what is Git? What is Kubernetes? What is this container thing? So it's a very interesting mix at our Warfare Center, and a very interesting challenge that we're facing on, how do we bring these best practices? How do we offer services to not hinder projects, but also to bring those projects up to speed that really need it?
Thanks, Ian. And then over to you, Stephen.
Thanks. So I'm Stephen McGill. I'm VP of Product Innovation at Sonatype. And so what that means is I'm sort of looking at our product portfolio, thinking about what we can do in the future in terms of features, doing research to try and learn new things about how to improve security and quality of software. And so Sonatype, broadly speaking, is focused on software security, both for third-party dependencies, open source that you might be bringing into your project, as well as the code that developers are writing day to day. And I actually came at this more from the research side originally. I did my PhD work in static analysis and did sort of basic science and technology work in that space for quite a while. And then got more and more interested in the product side and interested in really transitioning these technologies and getting them more in the hands of developers, having more of an impact on day-to-day software development. And sort of started making that pivot around the time that Agile became more and more of a thing, right? And so that was a nice set of challenges, right? How do we take these tools and technologies that traditionally have run sort of outside the development workflow and bring them into the development process? How do we contribute to, solving this problem that developers have of more and more being expected of them, right? With DevSecOps and DevOps originally, development has expanded beyond just writing code. Right now, you're tending to infrastructure, you're dealing with operations. And so, how do we provide support for developers in that domain?
Great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and pop up our first poll question. Please answer this if you'd like to receive your CPE credit. My agency uses automated processes to regularly search for vulnerabilities within our software supply chain. So please take a moment to respond to that. We had an interesting thought-provoking question come through from our audience already. So I'm going to go ahead and prioritize this one. It's a little lengthy, so bear with me as I read it. But will it take a new generation to be senior in management in order to fully embrace all of the cyber resources and technology available to actually achieve these tasks at hand? I'm sure you guys can kind of tell where they're going with this one. But it seems that there is a reluctancy amongst the older generation to fully embrace this technology. This means that there are a lot of options that are not being explored to keep security ahead of the curve, and it takes end users and boots on the ground to be aware of the complete cycle of the job to be done, but it takes regular technicians to study new technologies to see where they could apply. So working jointly together makes an opportunity to communicate to senior management how some technologies may benefit and simplify work tasks. This person says that there's very little time for the subject matter experts to study these technologies, but it would be best to guide innovators where technology could assist. So that being said, only once management allows subordinates time to also get involved in the IT role will agencies get up from behind the 8 ball. Now, what are you guys' thoughts? I'm gonna start with Eric, because I see his head is nodding. I think you've got something to respond with.
I'm thinking I'm not answering that if my boss is on this call.
He's not. I don't see his name.
Obviously that's a very good point. I agree with the sentiment. I don't know that I think it has to happen. Do we need a new generation to be in charge in order to make these kinds of changes and differences? I think it ends up coming with knowledge. And I realize that's a struggle. The last panel dealt with this too, of getting it to come from top down. So convincing that top of what's important for what you want to get done. I think, and this is no offense, but I think the younger, or this younger generation we're probably talking about, or maybe doesn't exist yet, which drives my point even more, is the inexperience with also having to lead and manage at a higher level. You get tugged with a lot of priorities. I am not saying that IT and everything related to it is not a priority, but there's a lot of things that go into that full larger budget, and everything can't be a number one. But if it makes the questioner feel better, I have those same arguments often. If this matters what I'm doing, which is why you hired me, why is it not getting funded? Why is it not getting adopted? So though I agree that there are often a lot of challenges that we don't see at the lower levels that go into those decision making.
I feel like Ian has a response to this as well.
Yes, just like Eric said, the last panel really kind of hit on this as well. And, I did like what was said, in that, one of the great things that you can do to really, drive that adoption, drive, getting those senior leaders really into, into the project, into what's being done, is, don't give them a PowerPoint, don't give them an Excel spreadsheet, get them to do something hands-on. Or, a lot of times, those that are under them, as you get really high up in the leadership, those that are under them, get them to buy in so they can say how great it is. A great example was one of the projects I worked on early on at NSWC Dahlgren. Our sponsor was somebody who had been in the Navy, was a Navy test pilot, really smart, but was very traditional, still had his emails being printed out and handed to him in the morning. So, how do I convince him that this new great AI bot that we had was something he needed for, the workers under him? And, really at the end of the day, he said, I'm not going to use it. I don't care. You get the people under me to use it and to come back to me, show me what value it's bringing them. And, that's what I want. So a lot of these, senior leaders, they, what they're concerned about is the people under them, getting the job done, faster, whether it be on budget or under budget. And, those are the things that they're worried about. So if you can get, kind of that buy-in from the people that are going to be talking to them on a daily basis, that's where the real value kicks in. And that's where those real changes start to happen.
Thank you, Ian, for sharing those insights. And Stephen, I'll open it up to you as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great example, this idea of, well, I'm going to let you guys figure that out and then come back to me with the feedback. If you can foster if you have leadership that wants to foster a learning environment and that wants to sort of push more responsibility down the organization, then, I think that's exactly what you need, right? And you can explore these things. I've seen people from all generations leading DevOps transformations, right? And it really is about wanting to make the change. And I think also recognizing that at the end of the day, it's about technology, but it's also a lot about culture and making cultural shift in how you approach development. And so, yeah, if you have leadership that thinks your culture is great, nothing needs to change, then that's obviously going to be a problem. But the idea of adapting your culture to suit, the modern environment is, that's been a thing for a long time. It's not just about DevOps. And so I think you can definitely have leadership that recognizes that.
Thank you. And great audience question. If you have more, please send them in since we do have limited time here. But let's just talk some best practices. Maybe we can go around robin and share what you think your top one is that maybe hasn't already been mentioned or people don't necessarily think of. So it doesn't have to be the most obvious one. It can be, something for folks at home to consider. So best practice for modernizing federal IT through the use of DevSecOps practices. Eric, do you want to begin?
Sure. So especially adopting anything, my first overall recommendation would be, and obviously I would make this up, this is probably true with anything you want to get into, is baby steps, right? I'm not saying take your time, but let's not choose the biggest project or the biggest mouthful in order to see or prove if this makes sense or if we're going to be successful. So keeping that in mind across the board, that's the first one. What we've realized in adopting Agile, the next best way to continue maturing and then even getting into DevSecOps, which for us right now is a lot of CI/CD, the continuous integration, continuous delivery. Work with your developers, the hands-on tech people, like Ian foot stomped when he was talking. See what they're doing. See what they think they should be doing or could be doing. You, whoever you are, probably don't have to be the ones that come up with these ideas. Check with them and see what they have as ideas. Our organization wouldn't shift off a waterfall because everybody had been beaten into submission for 20 years that was the best way to do it. And when a change came, and it's a good change, and that's Agile, it was hard for people to get on board. But now that we are and we're looking for better, my press and my word that I probably should have just shared is automation. So you get into CI/CD, start looking at automation. What can I automate to eventually simplify what my software development teams, or what I consider our software development teams, that whole software development lifecycle, how much of that can you automate? And like I said, start with baby steps. Start at the beginning and get some baby steps in the process. Your Git repo, your automated jobs in order to do commits, and then maybe scans and builds as examples. And then you work your way down the line until you get to a delivery or a deployment.
Great, thank you. And Ian, I know you have a unique perspective from your experiences. Would you like to share some of your thoughts as well around that?
Yes, exactly what Eric said. I 100% completely agree, and that's what I was going to say as well. But I can shift to another point. One thing I've noticed within the government space when it comes to development, a lot of development is done at the contractor level or outside, and it's brought in, and the government entity is most likely the integrator of a bunch of contractors bringing their code together. So what I've found is that one thing to I encourage not only all government agencies but everyone trying to adopt DevSecOps or really anything new is provide your developers, provide those that are in these environments an area to do experimentation. A lot of times when we, go to work in a, government cybersecurity space, something that you may do outside on the, commercial side, you have to stand this up, this integrates well, everything's working fine. And then you pull that into the government space and then you say, oh, well, we have to do a firewall mod. Oh, well, we have to, do something with the network, or the network restricts this kind of activity. So, we have to figure out a workaround. And that can eat up time, which then eats up some of the labor hours and budget. So providing these people who are working in this environment, whether it be your security people, your DevOps engineers, your infrastructure, your developers, providing them some type of area to experiment in, to say, hey, this is something new. Let's test it out in this government environment. Will it work for us? Do we have to change things? And that's really going to go a long way. Even if it's not the same person going to implement whatever it is, they can then become the champion to say, hey, I've done this before in this environment. Let me help your project, or let me help you get through these issues that you're seeing. And that can also accelerate the adoption of a lot of tools and best practices.
Thank you, Ian. And Stephen, do you have any other best practices you would like to bring to light at this time?
Yeah, so I have two, one on the code you're writing side and one on the sort of open source dependency side. So in terms of your code and in particular code scanning, but really anything in the pipeline, I think it's super important to not add new steps, not add new dashboards to the process, not give people another thing to focus on, but rather use existing steps that you already have, right? So if you're already doing code review, what can you introduce into code review to just take care of things at that stage in the process? How can you leverage the IDE that developers are already working in? Those points of integration into things that are already a step in the development process are super important. And then on the dependency side, I think a best practice is to shift away from just caring about security and just being responsive to security vulnerabilities, and shift into a mode of just staying up to date, staying more current, right? Because if you're upgrading your dependencies, if you're staying sort of closer to the latest version, you're naturally going to be exposed to fewer vulnerabilities. You're naturally going to adopt those patches as they're released.
All right, thank you guys. Let's go ahead and pop up our second poll question, please. There we go. When our team becomes aware of a vulnerability in an open source component that we use, how long does it take to mitigate this vulnerability across your applications? All right, please go ahead and take a moment to answer that. And then let's talk challenges. So real quick, maybe, provide us a story from your own experience as far as like a challenge you face and what you've done to overcome it, or what you are currently working on to overcome this challenge in regards to IT modernization through DevSecOps. So if there's any solutions that you implemented, or just your thoughts around that in general, let's take the next couple minutes or so for each panelist to respond. We'll go in the same order. Eric, please begin.
Sure, I'll make something up first to give the other two guys time to make up their better story. So pretty much what I said in a previous answer is when our organization decided, correctly so, to adopt Agile, we quickly realized that in order to get further with that Agile maturity, we needed to automate, and our start there is a CI/CD pipeline. So helping developers or providing them the capability in order to automate more of their software development lifecycle, their activities. A little bit of work on the front end as you're building those automated jobs and triggers and learning the tools and getting them to work correctly. But once you do what used to be a lot of manual peer reviews, code reviews, some security work, but even code builds and app deliveries and even configuration management, you can automate. I'm not saying we're taking the humans completely out of it, but it's freeing those people up to either do more, no offense to people that don't like to do work, or do different in the sense of being able to help the organization continue to advance and modernize. So essentially, we're just working on Agile maturity through whatever means we can, which is a CI/CD pipeline currently.
Great, thank you. And then Ian?
Yes, I know one thing that I see a lot, and really the root of it comes in, when adopting these new best practices, new tools, and things like that. One of the big things with DevSecOps is to really bring to light, shift security left, try to bring to light, a lot of these issues and vulnerabilities, whatever it may be, before they're introduced later down in the software development lifecycle. I've seen some resistance to adoption, and I think it is related to, kind of the control over the projects some of the project managers have, the developers, of not really wanting to put out there of, oh, wow, we have this many vulnerabilities, oh, well, we kind of violate or don't really match up too much to our, risk management in this way. And, kind of, the defensive side of, well, we don't really want to, show all of this yet. It's still a product in process. We're not going full production yet. But, the other side to it is, we need to open up. We need to be realistic and say, these are the issues that we're having. And, once we can do that, especially, enterprise-wide, we can really see that, okay, this isn't just an issue for one project. This is an issue for multiple projects. This is an issue that, it isn't just, to single you out. We all have this problem. And then from there, that increases our ability to collaborate, to say, hey, project number 2, how did you resolve this issue? Or how did you get around, or how did you patch this vulnerability? And, I think really, fighting through getting those projects, or trying to really defend and, keep everything behind the curtain, to open up and to really share out the results, in a way increases that collaboration, so that, we can all work together to fix these issues. And, one way we're approaching our software factory and, how we're going to be helping these teams is to really provide what we look at as success managers. Some teams will only need kind of the thumbs up, you guys are doing good, while other teams will say, hey, I really need help on this issue. Well, we can provide those people that can, get in there with the team, with the project, and, work through any issues that they may have.
Thank you, Ian. And then Stephen, we will end with your response.
Sure. Yeah. So I think one challenge that arises, there's a challenge that arises once you've adopted a lot of these DevSecOps principles, and once you've taken steps down the automation path that Eric was talking about, and Ian as well, where you now have a lot of the things, or at least a good chunk of the things that the security team was attending to with sort of their scanning and their approach happening further left, happening as part of the development process. And then the question becomes, okay, now how do you effectively leverage the security team in this sort of new way of working, right? And I think, there's an important shift that has to happen there. Disclaimer, I don't know that I know the ultimate answer to this question, but, I think one thing that can happen is, it frees up that team to interact differently with the development team. And it becomes less about, oh, there's these 5 issues that this tool flagged, you need to go fix those, and more about, let's talk about, the next 6 months. Let's talk about the next year. Let's get involved in that architectural and technology planning, and contribute to the secure design of the system. And so it becomes sort of a different level of conversation.
Thank you, guys. So real quick, we're going to go through one more time. There are thousands of people watching you, okay? What is the one thing that you really want to drive home for our audience when it comes to DevSecOps in the federal government? And if there's not thousands watching you right now, they will be, because we're on YouTube. So go subscribe. Eric, what would you like to leave our audience with?
It sounded like you said, don't subscribe. I was thinking, same.
No, do go subscribe.
Got it. Go subscribe, she said, everyone. To adopt, it's a same as I said for Agile, and maybe I already put something. To adopt, it is a culture change, and like they said on the last panel, it's top down, especially if you're working in the federal government. We are a bureaucracy, and that requires a top down. So if you're really wanting to get into it, I would say start with Agile. You're pretty quick going to realize you want to do that more and do that better, or you should. And in order to do so, there are some other things you have to advance with. And I think that is DevSecOps. I wouldn't be afraid of it. You just try it. And yeah, maybe that's enough.
Love it. Thank you. And Ian?
Yes, I think the biggest thing that, I would leave anybody with is go for the small wins, find those things that, the project may say they want to do DevSecOps and they want to do all these great things, but, find those small things that they can implement quickly, show value in it, and ultimately, kind of instead of from the top down, from the bottom up, show that, hey, these little changes that we made have provided value. We've, decreased our build time. We've, increased the, amount of features we can push out. And, that will also help to drive kind of the change from that leadership perspective. So go for those small wins when you're looking at and trying to implement these new technologies and best practices.
Great, thank you. And then Stephen.
Yeah, I would say, one thing I'd like to leave everyone with is to focus broadly on code quality and not just security, and like people sometimes get scared by that. They're like, oh, I'm going to have to fix all these quality issues in addition to these security issues. But the thing is, that bug that could cause an application crash, it could also lead to a denial of service attack, right? And so you're going to end up having to address all of this anyway. If you can develop a culture of high software quality, security will come along for the ride.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate all of our panelists today and the audience who's tuned in and gave us some really interesting questions to mull over. I want to thank our partners again. I'm going to read them: Acquia, Armis, Atlassian, AvaPoint, Denodo, Dynatrace, ForcePoint, ForgeRock, Avanti, Nutanix, Pure Storage, Rubrik, REI Systems, Savant, Sonatype, Software AG, Government Solutions, and Veeam Government Solutions. Oh, I should have taken a bigger breath before I started that, for partnering with us today on this event, and also to our keynote speaker. So thanks again, and we hope to see you at day 2 of this event, which is tomorrow. If you are still hanging on, please fill out the final poll question of whether you'd like to receive your CPE credit certificate via mail, yes or no, as your 2 options. And if you are not registered, please go check out our events page online and register for all of our upcoming events as well. So look forward to speaking with you all again soon, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.